Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started in just a moment. If you are in the chat and you can hear my voice, make sure to mention it in the chat. I just want to make certain we do not have the audio issues from last week. So again, please let me know if you can hear me. I know the music is kind of loud, but if you can hear me over this, please let me know. And we'll get started here in just a moment. Loud and clear. Excellent. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info coming at you after the conclusion of the South Point 400 this past Sunday. The Las Vegas Motor Speedway got no shortage of things to talk about on this week's show. We'll absolutely talk about the Bubba Wallace story, as well as the latest announcement as to his penalty going into Homestead. We'll talk about the action that we covered trackside this weekend, both at the Bull Ring and the main event there. Quite a bit happened this weekend. I think it's just been kind of been recovering from all of that today. Certainly seen no shortage of everybody offering their takes on that. I know it's already kind of circulated a little bit, but we'll definitely get into that and talk about it on the show this evening. Very exciting. Very exciting. It was. I think that this was. I hope you guys enjoyed following along with our coverage here this past weekend. I think Vegas is starting to really become one of our favorite stops here. This is just our second year of covering it. Both myself and Lastbro coming out there this weekend. And so it was really, I'm just trying to think about where to start. I mean, there's a lot to cover here, but we'll get to the Bubba Wallace thing in a little bit here. We'll definitely talk about that. The last place finish especially ends up being just like a small part of the story. No doubt after everything that was going on here. Yeah, nice souvenir. Oh, yeah, no, thank you, some dude. You must mean, yeah, my goodness, this right here. Big thanks to Last Bro on this. He actually got to the short track early before I got there. Unfortunately, I missed the beginning where they had Kurt Busch and Brendan Gaughan doing the opening ceremonies. There's a bit of a scheduling conflict between Cup Series qualifying and the races at the Bull Ring this year, which I wasn't too crazy about. Hopefully something gets worked out. But Last Bro went over to the Brendan Gaughan thing, and Brendan, is always a really cool guy. And so Last Bro got this signed for me. It was my birthday last week, my 40th birthday. So big thanks to everyone again on the birthday wishes on that. This ended up being kind of an unofficial part of that whole weekend. And so we had a great time on that. And Last Bro got this here, and he's signed it there. Happy 40th. From Brendan. So big thanks to both Last Bro and Brendan Gaughan on this. Really means a lot to me. And we got to get this framed and set up somewhere in this display. It's too bad I don't have anything else. I need to get some other things in here like this. I don't know, maybe something really large as well that could really kind of tie this room together. It's too bad I didn't find anything like that this weekend. I think that would have been, that's one thing that one of these days, maybe we'll find that one of these days. So it was kind of, Oh, what's that doing over there? What? That looks like Todd Gilliland's Rueda Bush Development Company's banner. That one guy tweeted and said that they was left behind after the race. How did that end up here? Gosh, I don't know. So all kidding aside here, well, here it is. So just in case, just so there's no panic on here, in case the folks at Front Row Motorsports are watching this, I have talked to the folks over at Front Row who were extremely gracious on this. Don't get used to this being in the background. It is going to be sent back to them this week. I thought I would just have a little bit of fun before sending it back out in the mail here. So kind of a funny story on this. We're doing things a little bit out of order, but I'll put a bow on this part of the story here from this weekend. After the race was over with, and I finished posting my article, there were maybe like 2 or 3 people left in the media center. Things wrapped up pretty quickly. Having an earlier start was actually kind of a cool aspect of the Vegas race this time around. So it was still just barely kind of getting dark. And that was when I went out there and I brought the Kurt Busch diecast out there. I found a 64th of his Kansas win car, certainly with the news on Saturday. And we'll talk more about that tonight here as well. Brought the diecast out, wanted to do some shots on the start finish line. I was hoping to do it before the race started, but there were so many people over there, Kurt included, that there was no way that was going to be possible there earlier. So I went out there and I took those pictures. There were a lot of other fans that were actually staying well afterwards. There were a lot of course, you're going to have a lot of mobile homes and everything that's in the infield, and a lot of people that are kind of checking out everything that was going on there. And a group of fans were actually taking their picture at the start finish line, so I was kind of helping them with that. We were kind of hanging out. So I saw all of that, and then at that point I was starting to kind of walk back over to the media center because Last Bro was kind of parked in the infield, and I went by and I was looking down the wall and I saw this on the wall there. And, obviously at the end of the day, you have teams, they pack up their carts, they load up everything, and they'll take this with them. They'll pull the tape off and kind of roll the thing up and put it away and throw it and everything else. And I think really this week was particularly critical because, of course, they had to come all the way out to Las Vegas, and now they're currently heading all the way over to Homestead, Florida this weekend for the Cup Series race, the 400-mile race. This weekend. And then looking towards the right side, right by the last garage entrance to the right, this banner was still on there. And that's very unusual. I've only covered a few races since really kind of doing more of the stuff with the website and everything. This has got to be the first time that I've ever seen one of these kind of left behind. And at first I was like, okay, well, look, the track, I'm sure the team knows that they're missing it. I'm sure that the track is going, they're going to call the track will arrange shipping and they'll get it sent up to them. Then I was kind of, and I posted, that's when I posted the picture, and I was like, guys, you kind of forgot something. It's unfortunate they didn't have direct messages. Otherwise I would have sent it that way instead. But I went ahead and posted that. So I originally just saw that. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I posted the picture, and suddenly everybody's talking about it. I was like, dude, you should take that. Dude, you should really grab that. You should do that. And, I was thinking about it. And then I was like, well, I mean, I don't want to confuse them. Maybe they call the track in the morning, and then they see that the banner's not there, and they think somebody took it. Now, I also knew, of course, there were other fans there, and to their credit, again, none of the fans even really looked at this thing. Like nobody was attempting to take it off of there or anything like that. So I was thinking about it, and then I was like, well, in the media center, we have like name tags that we have. It depends on the track. Some places reuse their name tags. Other ones, they just print them out on a printer and kind of tape them up there. When I was wrapping up doing my article on that very uneventful last place finish from the Cup Series race here, I noticed there was a person that was coming around and kind of, ripping the signs up, kind of tearing them up, and then just kind of throwing them in the recycling bin. And I was like, well, I don't want them to do that with this. Like, I mean, this, again, it's very uncommon that they would leave the pit sign there. That's just, it's almost like the first thing they pack up. So it was like, okay, well, I don't want them to throw it away. And I don't know, maybe some other fan takes it or something. Like, I don't know about that. And also it's Front Row Motorsports, and I know that this is not one of the mega buck teams out there. So the other thing that occurred to me was when I did the JD McDuffie book, one of the people that I interviewed was Jerry Freeze, because the 38 car, in fact, ran the JD McDuffie throwback scheme back in 2016. And I did a interview with Jerry. He was really helpful on that. Talking about how the arrangement came together, how the Bailey family and the Rumpel family were involved in it, and that made it into the book. So if you haven't checked out the book, that's very much in there. And a big thanks again to Jerry Freeze on that. I hope that I still had his number. Did not see and I said, look, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to pull this thing off the wall. I'm going to roll it up. I'm going to bring it back into the car. And then the next morning, I'm going to call Front Row Motorsports, and I'm going to send this I'll call them and say, look, you guys want this back? I know you had the sponsor. I looked it up on JSKI. They had the sponsor. It was going to be at Gateway, at Road America, and Indianapolis. And then the Gateway one got changed to something else, which I guess is why it was running at Las Vegas. So with 3 races left, I wasn't sure if they had any sponsors left, but I was going to call them regardless. I mean, that was, obviously, I ordered a sign just a fraction this size for the JD McDuffie one, and it was pretty expensive, at least for me. I work on a pretty narrow budget, so I can only imagine how much something like this costs. I still don't exactly know how much this costs, but I know that if they at all need it, I want to make sure that it gets back to them for sure. So I didn't want to leave it there, so I went and I doubled back. And the tape was very hard to get off of there. They used like duct tape to put this thing on there. Very large. I don't know if it's like the full on 200-mile-an-hour tape, but it was like patches maybe about that long, that wide, and stretched across like the top, like little pieces here. You can see on one part here, there's like a little bit of a black stripe. Well, I guess you can't really see it too well, but you can see a little bit there. But yeah, there's a little bit of black tape on there from a previous run. It must have been for the Indy run. And then they put another layer of tape over that. And so, and it wasn't coming off of that. A little bit came off of it, but not really. So I was starting to mess with this. And then I had like this Grinch Stole Christmas moment where I'm there, and okay, I'm not obviously a member of the team, anything like that. I'm just me. I'm wearing my black polo shirt and my black pants and all that. And I'm kind of pulling this thing off the wall. So I'm doing this. And, again, there's a few fans out there, and one was like a little small family there, and a couple kids came up. Like one of them was like maybe like 5, the other was like 8 or something like that. And like, hey, mister, you need help getting that off of there? And it didn't even occur to me as I was doing this that they thought like I was on the team or something like that. And I was like, no, it's like, yeah, you don't have to, but then they helped me get the thing off the wall. Really nice kids. So that was really cool. One of them was wearing a Kyle Larson hat. And kind of a foray into our discussion a little bit later in the show here. He was wearing a backwards Kyle Larson hat. And he's like, did you see what happened with Bubba Wallace? And I was like, yeah. It's like, wow, what do you think NASCAR is going to do? And the kid right away says, I think he should be suspended. Kyle Larson's my hero. And he got in that crash with him. And it's like, well, that might happen. And it's, and you said, so there was that moment, then it was cool. It's like, oh, our parents are calling, so we're coming back there. So I was like, hey, thanks kids. So I got the thing off the wall and I tried to roll it up, but the tape wasn't coming off of it. So at that point, so I was, I got the thing off the wall. We three of us got the thing off the wall. A couple kids here and myself. So we got it off of there, and I'm trying to roll it up, and I'm trying not to draw a lot of attention to myself, even though most people are pretty much headed out at this point. So I wanted to kind of roll it up, but the tape wasn't allowing me. So I kind of bunched the thing up, and it was just kind of in this big mass. And I was just kind of carrying it along, and I'm walking back to the car, and the car is pretty far away. I mean, we were kind of in the middle of the infield. I'm out on pit road, of course, getting this thing, and I walk away from it. Then I almost leave my computer back at the pit wall, so I had to turn around really quick and grab that because security was tight during this race. I'll tell you what, like during the race itself, like if you left the bag and you took like one step away from it, they were gonna be like right on you. That wasn't really an issue with this at this point here. So I carried this thing up and I brought it over to Lastbro. He was waiting for me in the car, and he was playing like a video game or something like that. And I was kind of tapping on the window, and he kind of looked at me. I was like, what the heck do you have in your hand? What is that? And just because it just didn't look like anything at first. And I was like, dude, you wouldn't believe it. This team, it left the sign behind. We got to call these guys in the morning and see if they get it back. And of course, back in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, maybe they don't want it back, but it's like, okay, look, I'm going to call them because again, it's a small team. They're working on a narrow budget. And again, they ran the JD McDuffie scheme too. I don't want to be on bad terms with any of these programs. And if this was even a Chase Elliott banner or something like that, I would have called them too. Like, word to the wise, because this is kind of where the story went at this point. They were very thankful that this was in safe hands, that it didn't just disappear and end up on someone's roof. And that was very much clear from the tweets and everything the next morning. I saw so many memes and stuff pop up in that thread, and it's like, oh, we got to really make sure we call them right away. So I was barely even out of bed when I was calling them. I called their parts department. I called Front Row Motorsports main number because I couldn't find Jerry's number. So I called the main department. No one was there. Called the parts department. No one was there. Called the PR department. No one was there. So eventually I left a message on there and I'm like, okay. So meanwhile, the thread on Twitter is just kind of blowing up. And everybody's like, yeah, you should have it. You should Vikings funeral. You should burn it, or you should put it in the background, or you should do this. You should do that. And every one of the comments, the PR person is just like losing their mind. Like, no, don't do that. It's like, it costs a whole lot to do it. And like, so I put the message on there, just said, DM me. Just let me know. And so they DM'd me really promptly. By the time we got out to the car, by the time we loaded up the car there, the person from Front Row Motorsports reached out to me. Really cool guy, really cool, and was very thankful. I showed him the picture. My brother and I got all the tape off of it, so we were able to kind of roll it up into this neat little roll there, and we had it up on the desk. We made sure we got it in the car, and they were very, very appreciative of it. And in fact, they are, for those of you doing previews of paint schemes, apparently they are going to run this paint scheme again at Phoenix for the finale. So that is the time frame we're working with here. So we are absolutely sending them back to them this week. So again, if you're watching out there, don't think we're changing anything on the strategy here. We're absolutely sending it out. We're just having a little bit of fun with it here on the show before sending it back. So it's still in good shape. It's still in one piece. The roll is on the floor here, and we'll be sending it out to you this week. So we'll get it out to them. And they'll be running that scheme again, which is great because we're going to cover the race in Phoenix. And when we do, I want to make sure I seek out and see when they got see this sign on the wall again. And we'll have to make sure to get in our picture there at the track. So the team was very, very cool with this here. And they were very relieved, actually. The person I talked to was one of their PR representatives. And his boss spoke back to him. I don't know if it was Jerry or not, but I know Jerry's still involved with the team. But they were very appreciative that the sign was saved and that we're, of course, sending it back to him. So, again, just in case they watch this or they see this screenshot and they think that we're doing anything else, like, no, we're absolutely sending it back to them this week to make sure they got it for Phoenix. And they didn't have to do this, but right when I told them about that, they asked, hey, what's you and your brother's shirt size? And they're like, well, okay. I mean, yeah, we'll tell you. But apparently they're going to send us a couple of things. But I mean, that's nice. They didn't have to do that, but very appreciative of that. So just doing our part to help these small teams. We can't really afford to sponsor these teams, really. But if we can save them a couple bucks and make sure that we get this thing back over to them, as far as I'm concerned, that's cool there. So that's kind of the story. So again, just in case you guys are watching there, yeah, this is still coming back over to you. So don't panic. And I'm keeping an eye on the chat here in case it pops up. It's like, why do you have that there? It's like, no, it's cool. It's going out. So we're getting that sent back this week here. And very appreciative over to the folks at Front Row Motorsports, specifically Todd Gilliland's team here, the number 38, the Rowetta Bush scheme. I believe they were 25th in the Vegas race this past week here. A challenging race. Certainly the long green flag runs, I think, were a struggle for a lot of these mid-pack or smaller teams out there. But yeah, that was kind of another aspect of it there too. So in the meantime, we'll just have a little bit of fun with it here before we ship it out. And definitely wanted to have it as kind of our guest part on the show. And that's not even the craziest thing from the show tonight. That's just how the show is starting. So thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. Again, we're going to do things a little bit out of order because it's not our typical kind of post-race show. Again, we're going to talk about the Bubba Wallace deal. I also have some information on Mark Martin. I saw some questions about that as well on that too. So definitely we'll be talking about that at the same time. So yeah, so that'll be interesting. But and again, this is real, by the way. I didn't just have this out as a prank. Last Pro really did get this over at the Bull Ring. The Bull Ring race was really exciting this year. They had a lot of feeder divisions that they didn't really have at the race last year. A lot of local short trackers and everything. The schedule went pretty much until about 11:30 at night there. So, anybody, if you ever look into getting, tickets to check out racing at Vegas, you get more than your money's worth. I know they didn't have the truck series this year for the fall race, but I mean, you got 2 round of 8 races and then you got all the short track deals here. But yeah, this is real here. This is Brendan Gaughan signed this here for that. So again, big thanks to Last Pro and to Brendan as well here on this. So definitely going into that. So I guess at this point, we'll talk a little bit about, probably the easiest way. I was thinking about doing it chronologically, but I guess we got to address the elephant in the room, and that, of course, is the Bubba Wallace accident with Kyle Larson, and especially with the news today that was announced this afternoon that Bubba Wallace has now been suspended. He will not be racing at Homestead this weekend. John Hunter Nemechek will be in the 45 car. Ty Gibbs will still be in the 23. This is interesting because, as I mentioned on Twitter just this afternoon, John Hunter was actually one of the drivers that was under consideration to drive the number 45 at the time. The number switch is always confusing. After Kurt Busch's crash at Pocono in qualifying earlier this year. What we really have to do to address this story, I think, is kind of provide larger context. And this was kind of really the challenge in doing the article, because incidentally, kind of a much less relevant aspect of this, he did finish last for the second time this year, for the 4th time in his career, and we're, of course, well past inspection, so that result is still standing on that end. So the weekend begins with, of course, the news of Kurt Busch coming up to the podium on, I believe it was Saturday morning, and very emotional, as well he should be under the circumstances this year. The safety concerns about the next gen car is something that we talked about on this show every week. It seems like just about every week. It's one of our almost weekly segments here, certainly over this past summer. Have really come to a head, and we had the announcement earlier this week before we left that Kurt was going to have an announcement at 8:00 in the morning on Saturday, and everybody seemed to fear that he was going to be just straight up retiring, that it was just going to be the end of his career. And depending on how you look at the language that was used in his statement and the context of everything else that has happened there at the same time, it may still seem that way. I still believe from hearing his interview that he's not done. I know that the thing that's in vogue, I think especially when, really Mark Martin, for example, and a lot of drivers really afterwards talked about this a little bit in the retirement seasons video, that drivers are very unwilling to say that they're retiring from racing now, or that they're going to do a fan appreciation tour, like a Richard Petty, a Harry Gant, a Darrell Waltrip thing, and then just say, okay, that's it, then we'll be done, and I'm never going to do it again. We've seen drivers like Jimmy Johnson who, stepped away. I think he's had about the closest thing to a fan appreciation tour. And sadly, it was affected by the pandemic, so a lot of fans couldn't see him race, and that's sad. But ultimately went into IndyCar and now apparently is stepping away from that and perhaps stepping away from racing, at that point. Although, depending on what you're seeing lately, maybe he's going into, a midget racing or dirt tracking or something like that. I know he was doing something with Alex Bowman a while back. But regardless, Kurt Busch's announcement was very much in that same spirit, that it was one where, he never said the word retirement in the interview. And I took it very literally in when he was describing it, that he was stepping away from full-time competition, that he was not running the rest of this year. That was confirmed. And that he was not going to be running full-time next year. Perhaps the hope of maybe running a few races here and there. I thought one thing that was very, I think very present of him was mentioning some things that he still wanted to accomplish in his Cup career, that he won with 3 different manufacturers at Michigan and that he hadn't yet won with Toyota. And it was interesting that he thought that was kind of a silly thing to point out. And I'm like, no, I think that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, he's right on top of that. And these are races that he never got a chance to compete in this year. Because, of course, the injury happened before the one Michigan race we had this year. Also mentioning that he wanted to win at Watkins Glen. Also mentioning that he wanted to win at Darlington. You think, of course, his photo finish with Ricky Craven in 2003 and how close he actually came to winning that race and how exciting that was. But that, indeed, is the closest he's ever come to winning a Cup race at Darlington. When we were there in 2019 covering the Southern 500, the 70th running, he had one of the best cars, one of his last runs for the Ganassi program. And had a great piece. Just unfortunately got involved in somebody else's accident, finished back in the order, but was a driver that's always been very consistent there. And I think he still has that determination. I don't think this is going to be the end of Kurt Busch running in the Cup Series. And I'm willing to even go out on a limb and say that I don't think that this is the end of him running full time. Maybe it won't be with 2311. Maybe they get a third charter. Who knows? We're talking about 2024. That's why when I tweeted it, when I was going through drafts, as everybody else was kind of wondering how to grapple with this story and everything too. I was saying that 2024 is to be announced. And I think that's the fairest way to put it. I think I was a little disappointed in the way a lot of the media kind of grapple with this, because I think everybody had a graphics package or a story or something that was set up in anticipation of Kurt Busch just straight up retiring and saying he's never coming back, and that was it. But this wasn't that, and that was disappointing because he deserves better than that. It's hard for me to think of him as a veteran, but then you think about, of course, a driver the last driver that competed against Dale Earnhardt famously got the middle finger from Earnhardt in the 2001 Daytona 500. And there were a lot of graphics that were set up saying this is the end of an era. I mean, again, it may be. I mean, I've been wrong about many things before, many things much, much smaller than this. But I sensed from his interview, from seeing it, and the way his voice cracked when he said that he was going to be full-time, he wants to come back. If it's at all possible, I do believe he may come back. I really do. So if you're a Kurt Busch fan, I hope you can take solace in that. Now, again, that has no bearing on what may actually happen. The unfortunate reality of things right now is that he's not medically cleared to race. If he can't get in the car if he wanted to. I know there was some discussion about that earlier today with the news of Bubba Wallace's suspension, if Kurt was going to come back in there. And no, and people were very right to point out that, yeah, Kurt was not going to run the rest of this year. Certainly don't see him coming back out before this car undergoes major changes to improve its safety, because of course that led to, the injury that he had at Pocono. But I do believe that, the way that he phrased it, was that he's still planning on coming back. And 2024 is a long ways away. And, we don't know what's going to happen with like teams that are in the bottom 3 in the charters. The same thing that bit Starcom Racing. And I don't like the way that it's being enforced. I don't like that these teams can't just expand on their own without somebody else losing their charter. It used to be teams would grow, teams would start and teams would fail. And, then at the same time, it didn't require a team to fail for another team to start. Now in the Cup Series, you're pretty much required to. I talked with Johnny Jackson who works in motorsports business management. He also drove some start and park efforts there in the Xfinity Series side. And they were talking about just that, as an open team, you're just operating at a complete loss. You just can't make any money at it. And that's why we've seen so many Cup fields this year, including this one at Vegas, which is the record shortest yet, with just the 36 chartered entries. And I know I beat on that every week, but it just doesn't feel right. And I think the news that we had, and I saw some great videos on this that was discussing this more in depth, the news that even teams like Hendrick Motorsports are not turning a profit with the current distribution of the TV rights purse versus sponsorship and everything else, should really open eyes as to, again, the success or failure of the charter system, not just the split. Not just the split of the TV money, although that's a much bigger pot you're working out of. But the part that they're working out of to help each other out isn't working either. I think that I took that to mean another point against the charter system there. Again, I don't know if there's any way that that's going to get loosened up, because now they have a charter where the price is inflated so much that people like, Dale Jr. are getting sticker shock and actively saying that, it's like, well, look, I'm going to maybe wait for things to cool down. That's kind of been, heck, it's like the housing market it's kind of turned into. And it's even more finite when you think about it. 36 spots for everybody in the entire world. There's international teams that are trying to get into the Cup Series. Think about the Hesseberg team. Think about the Nine Friends team. Isn't that out of Germany or something? They had to just completely pull a plug on doing things this year. On top of Carl Long's team scaling back their Cup program altogether. Now they're just in the Xfinity Series, hardly a notice there. The Money team came back at the Roval, got a little bit of coverage, but it was easily overlooked that we hadn't seen them since the Coke 600 earlier this year. And that's with Floyd Mayweather. It's the Money team, and they can't get back out there. It's showing just how damaged the system is there. So that's another thing to look at. I'm trying to remember how exactly I got on this track from the Kurt Busch thing. But that's definitely the situation there. So there was some more news on that end, and I think that's certainly troubling there. So, but again, without delaying it much further here, let's go into the meat of the story here. I mentioned the Kurt Busch one, because of course, safety is very much on the minds of everybody. I truly do believe, and I haven't heard anybody from NASCAR saying this, but I have been getting like 2000 to 2001 vibes off of a lot of the way that this season is played out. Thankfully, I think NASCAR is being much more responsive than they were in 2000 to 2001, if you can believe that. At least that's the way it feels to me. I wasn't media back then, but I feel like they've been a little more responsive there. There's been some difference. At least, there were safety meetings that occurred over at Vegas, at least one. I've heard some about maybe there was a second one. Media wasn't really involved in that. That was all behind closed doors. But I saw some of the other tweets from some of the other people at the track there. But basically the consensus is that there's nothing that NASCAR could really do to these cars that's going to that can make these impacts any less safe before the end of the year. That basically they're going to have to use the off season to fix this car. At least that's what I've been hearing. And so if that's the situation, and we are down to the last 4 races of this season, 4 including, 3 now, but of course 4 going into Vegas, kind of bringing up the context of going into the main event. That NASCAR has to be very nervous, very, very nervous. I think they have been very much put on notice of what the exact nature of the problem is. There are some problems they've addressed and they've tried to minimize them, like the fires, like the issues with the rubber and the exhaust, the rocker panels, and trying to kind of figure that out. And thankfully, we've seen a decrease in that, at least on the Cup side. Still a problem in the trucks. I don't know what's going on there. But we've had that happen. We've had this discussion, and I think NASCAR is just, they're just hoping we get through these last couple of races and nothing serious happens. And I think that was the mentality going into this Las Vegas race. And that's without even mentioning Kurt Busch's, the announcement. I don't want to necessarily call it a retirement announcement. He's stepping away for a bit. Ernie Irvan had the same thing, and he came back with one eye and was running North Wilkesboro a bit later. Concussions are much more complicated. Absolutely. We absolutely have no idea what the timetable is, and we don't want them rushing back because things like that bit drivers like Ricky Craven in the past and, Dale Jr. And many others that probably we don't even know about because it didn't get talked about. That's very, very serious, and we don't want him rushing back. But I just don't, the thing on the Kurt Busch side of it, I just don't want people just rushing him out the door and saying, okay, well, he's done. Who's going to be the next guy in there? It's like, well, wait a minute. Look, first of all, we already knew it was going to be Tyler Reddick. I mean, it just confirmed that he was going to be in the 45 this year instead of the next year. But I just think it's a little disrespectful to take the narrowest view of what happened there with the Kurt Busch situation. So as far as I'm concerned, 2024 is TBA, and it's all entirely dependent on what progress he makes on his concussion protocol and what the doctors are saying on that end. So I think that's where we are on that. Now, again, mentioning all of this, so you have the Kurt Busch situation, you have NASCAR's concern about this car and the safety of it, and and specifically knowing now that particularly impacts to the rear of the car are extremely, extremely dangerous. That even an impact like Alex Bowman's, which by all accounts looked extremely minor, that they could have, that if they got to the pit road and nothing else happened and the driver was okay, they could have just patched that car up and sent it right back out there. But Alex Bowman couldn't keep his eyes open. That it was such a dangerous situation in that point that he couldn't even be comfortable in the car, never mind driving it as fast as he would have to do it on that 1.5-mile track. So you have all that happening. So you got the Kurt Busch announcement. You have NASCAR concerned about this car, and they're counting down these last couple of races. And I'm sure they would rather the discussion just be about this great season we've had. We've had 19 different winners. We have a crazy championship. We have no idea who the Final Four is going to be. We got guys like Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch that have already been eliminated. So a lot of favorites are out of it. We're going to have some kind of weird people up there. And I know Joey Logano wasn't necessarily everybody's favorite to make the Final Four, but that certainly played into this. So all of this has happened, not to mention on top of this, that this particular Cup race was run on the 11th anniversary of Dan Weldon's accident at this track. And this was actually, to people's credit, was actually mentioned a bit. I thought it was kind of something that people didn't really want to talk about going into this. I know we kind of made it our theme on the Magnet again this year because it was just happened to be run on the exact same day. Not really thinking about just the firestorm that's really been building up during all this. And obviously what led to Dan Weldon's situation wasn't a situation of like a driver intentionally causing a wreck. It was a larger combination of factors. Again, those of you maybe less familiar with the story, definitely check out my video Until Lap 11, and particularly NASCAR Man's Las Vegas Nightmare, IndyCar's Las Vegas Nightmare video, which provides the greater context as to what led to that race. I think I think especially his video is very instructive as to perhaps kind of looking at just that aspect and how safety can kind of absent-mindedly kind of fall into being kind of, an afterthought, maybe not consciously, but maybe absent-mindedly and kind of ignoring red flags. That was kind of another aspect of it. So you have all this that's going on, and you come into this race, and okay, you still want to talk about the playoffs. You still want to have, the championship. Mark Martin's there. There's a lot of great things to talk about in this, and we'll get into that too. But we got to talk about the big part of this story. So we've all seen the replays. And so, and I guess I'll provide my own view of it there at the same time. I was over on the turns 3 and 4 side of pit road around lap 94 or so, and tracking the last place battles there. I usually stay out on pit road during a lot of these. JJ Yaley had bounced off the wall, lost about 5 laps, made several unscheduled stops that dropped him well back in the order, and I was kind of tracking how much more ground he was losing to the other cars, and they were kind of waiting to get their next chance to kind of make some more repairs. I talked with Yaley after the race. Turns out there was an issue with one of the control arms, but apparently not the toe link, which was kind of surprising. So they never had a situation where they had to replace the toe link, but they just kind of held on there and were able to kind of pass some of the wrecked cars and the results of that. So I was tracking that at the same time, and all of a sudden I hear this sound, and I described it online as like thunder. But I think more accurately, it sounded like when you just kind of slam the lid of a dumpster shut, like a metal lid. It was just this bam, just this loud hit. And I just looked up. I was looking up for my phone. I just saw Larson's car spinning off the wall there. Had no idea Bubba was involved in it, or much less Christopher Bell. Just crazy situation. But it was a loud sound, and you could hear kind of the crowd react to it, and and all that. And then of course the TV screen is kind of next to me, and seeing Larson. I didn't know Larson really got out of the car at first. I saw Bubba got out of the car. I didn't know Larson got out of it. And then of course there was the fight. And yeah, the first thing I thought of was like, oh my goodness, this is like 93 with Bobby Hillin and Kyle Petty. And, knowing that Bubba Wallace had a great race in this car, he did. He led 29 laps. He won stage 1. He had a very fast car. I don't know if it was the same car from Kansas. I assume that, with the limited notes on this car, they're probably going to take any car that has any kind of success and try to run it at any similar tracks. Yeah, he was very much, Last Pro was watching him too, because he was his fantasy pick for the race this weekend. So he's kind of tracking what was going on. But yeah, it had an issue with short run speed. He was kind of falling back through the pack. And had the situation with Kevin Harvick on the back straightaway. Harvick backs out. Larson kind of dive bombs it in there. And even I thought too, with everyone else, that Larson made contact with Bubba and put him in the wall. And thank you to Kenny Wallace for drawing attention to this in his video. I watched it earlier, and I actually amended my article because of this, that yeah, there really wasn't contact. I mean, you watch it enough times there wasn't really contact between Larson and Bubba Wallace. Now, the air, that's a whole other factor. I mean, it certainly could disturb the air in a Rick Bass, Brett Bodine situation from 1992, the Hooters 500 kind of thing, and just kind of send a car around, or in a situation like that. I don't know, Kenny making the statement that Bubba deliberately put himself in the wall, maybe an overreaction or something. He was definitely crowded towards the fence there, but it was racing. It was hard racing. Both of them had very fast cars. It was still relatively early enough in the race, before the halfway point, and they were just going for it. And Bubba bounces off the wall, and then, he says that his steering broke, at least in that initial interview. If the steering broke on that car from the right-hand side of it, the car is not going to go to the left. Again, I'm not the most mechanically inclined person, but when I heard that was my first thought. I was like, no, okay. If that's going to be the issue, it's going to stay in the wall. It'll like grind against the wall and then stop. It'll be a situation like that. But instead, it kind of pulled straight, waited for Larson to kind of pull away a little bit, and then swung down and got into the left rear of the car. And of course, slid up the track, Larson's car in that moment. And, you see the replay, and the crowd was reacting to this very viscerally as well. Driver's side heading right towards the wall. In fact, the rear of the car slightly ahead of the front of the car. It was only but for Christopher Bell's involvement in it. Although the fact remains that, of course, it took out a driver that was competing in the playoffs at the same time. Not to mention the driver that just won last week, that's trying to kind of, get a solid run here to kind of get through this round, and now finds himself, 23 points to the bad going into Homestead, just needlessly. But the one saving grace to this, if there's anything positive to be gleaned from that, and I do agree, I think it was Kenny Wallace, it was either Kenny Wallace or the Door Bumper Clear guys that pointed this out, or maybe it was both of them, but I think they both made persuasive discussions about this, that but for Christopher Bell's contact, Larson's car probably would have hit the wall rear first, and at a much, much higher speed than Alex Bowman's wreck or these others. Now, we've heard from a lot of these wrecks that apparently it's the low speed impacts that have been the most serious, that the high speed impact ones, it seems to relatively not be as bad. However, I've heard conflicting things on that. Noah Gragson, for example, had his interview about his last place run in Atlanta, where he hit the wall head on and said that he had his belts completely strapped down, but after the impact, it was like, they just had loosened, they had pulled that much looser after the impact. And that was an enormous impact by the front of that car in that one. If you remember back in, I believe it was the spring race at Atlanta, where Bubba himself had a pretty bad wreck after wrecking across the finish line in that one too. That was kind of another race. The Texas race gets a lot of the attention, the negative attention for the wrecks this year, but I think that spring Atlanta race could be another one that I think people should look at a little bit more closely as to more evidence about this. But yeah, it was a situation that was setting up to be really, really bad. Kyle Larson's car already hit the wall pretty much flush with the driver's side. scrubbed off a little bit of speed. Apparently, Larson in his interview said that the team had done something to the car that softened the impact enough. I don't know what that was or what it was within the boundary of the rules. It may have had something to do with what I experienced on my side there following up with the car. We'll talk about that too. But, it could have been very, very serious. Now, Bubba Wallace isn't the first driver to make some contact with the, to right rear a car and send it up the track. A lot of times it can happen accidentally. It can happen completely innocuously. But there have been, of course, and I think Kicking the Tires did a great job on this, chronicling what's happened in a lot of these other wrecks and what NASCAR's response has been when one of these wrecks happen. And there is kind of a cross section of different responses as to whether or not the driver is suspended, whether the driver is parked for the rest of the race, whether it's a monetary penalty, and all that. It's kind of been all over the place, and there's not a firm sense of it. But I personally, and again, I know everybody's got their opinions on this and everything. It was dangerous and it was stupid and it shouldn't have happened. And it's disappointing that it happened. And again, I think my issue is much more, and I think a lot of people are kind of in this position too, that the issue is much more with the initial wreck itself than the fight afterwards. Although the fight isn't that great either if we're already talking about concussions. And, you see Larson's getting out of the car, you can conclude that he's probably, okay. Although, again, you can't tell with concussions. Like, who knows? I mean, there was no way of knowing whether or not Larson was concussed or not in that particular case. He barely got out of the car by the time Bubba got down there. But, it was reckless. And I know that the discussion has been a historical discussion. Now everybody, and again, Kicking the Tires, I think, is doing a good job at least boiling it down to the raw facts of these particular cases and trying to find some kind of element of consistency. That it's like what kind of wreck or what track it happens, or if it has anything to do with championship, or if it doesn't, or if a bystander gets involved in it, or if there's any other kind of factor in there. There's a lot that could be looked at there. And I do think a lot of it is kind of a judgment call. I think that kind of seemed to be the conclusion there. But, and again, there's a lot of elements there, but I think the worst case scenario in this one here, and I think the most damning thing about describing this particular one, is placing it in the proper context of everything, knowing that there's this danger to these cars, knowing that Kurt Busch, his own teammate, has announced that he's at least stepping away for a while, if not retiring completely, knowing that this same race is without Alex Bowman in the field, the winner of the race in the spring, who has been eliminated from playoffs from himself having a concussion, and that situation. Knowing, and then I think the Dan Weldon thing on top of that is relevant towards at least a discussion of safety or a warning rather of ignoring the importance of safety. I think it's still relevant, even though it's IndyCar and it was different circumstances. I think it's relevant to the discussion. To have all of that happen and then have this wreck happen, I think is reprehensible. I really do. And I don't buy. I know there's with Bubba Wallace. The unfortunate reality is there's two extreme groups. One that I think looks at him very narrowly, maybe under I think both groups, both of the most extreme groups when it comes to Bubba Wallace only view him in terms of his race, which I think is just wrong. But it's wrong in two different ways. There's one side that probably just doesn't like him, period, because of his race. And then there's another side that looks at him and and believes that he can do nothing wrong. And both, I think, are equally wrong in these cases. And it muddies the water, unfortunately, because whenever there's any kind of debate about driver safety or whatever is going on, both these sides are equally distracting to it. And we've seen some of that. There was one that was saying like, oh, there's only one difference between this and say Jeff Gordon and Jeff Burton's wreck or Kyle Busch's wreck with Ron Hornaday. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. everything I've talked about to this point is a clear difference from other instances like those. I mean, even if you want to go all the way back to 1979 and Cale Yarborough and the Allisons, it's a clear difference. The safety of this car, the open and notorious nature of the real threat to driver safety. Joey Logano was absolutely right. He could have cost Kyle Larson his career or his life. Absolutely. Completely agree with him on that. And I know some people want to be a little snarky about that because I know Joey's got his nature of being, kind of rattling people's cages and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, all these drivers have it. Larson mentioned it himself in his interview. I mean, again, everybody's got their own thing, but this is of a very different nature here. And that's the situation. And in point of fact, to again, respond to people who just want to just kind of characterize this in terms of race, there are situations where drivers, two drivers in the same race or just drivers in that situation. There's plenty of examples I can think of that were also reprehensible and probably should have been punished much more. I'm still upset about Kyle Busch's wreck with Ron Hornaday at Texas, not just for the fact that Kyle shouldn't have been in that race to begin with as a Cup Series driver going in the Truck Series and bounding about. I believe that race and that particular example in 2011, when he wrecked Ron Hornaday, under caution, a little different, but in a situation there where this is a much older driver, let's be fair here, folks, that could have been very serious. And it could have ended his career, or it could have resulted in a very serious injury. And yes, M&M's did pull out as a sponsor for a couple races, yes, he was suspended for the Texas Cup race. I think it should have come down much harder. I think he should have been parked the rest of that season. Go back to Texas in 2008. David Gilliland and Juan Montoya down the back straightaway. Same thing. Fast part of the track. Gilliland hooks Montoya. You have this very serious wreck. Gilliland's parked in that race. He's prevented from running the rest of the race. He probably should have been parked for another race after that. Why? Because it's a very fast and dangerous track. The circumstances were clearly different, and it was an intentional situation in that case. And then you go back to 2010, Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski. There's this ongoing feud. We see it every once in a while. We pretty much saw it a lot this summer with Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain. Thankfully, it didn't get to anything too out of control, much like you think of Jimmy Spencer and Kurt Busch, or the situation with Brad Keselowski and Carl Edwards. Most infamously, the situation where Carl Edwards hooks Brad Keselowski in the quad oval at Atlanta. Again, another very fast track. Now, did Edwards know that was going to result in Keselowski's car flipping and landing on the driver's side against the wall? No, I don't think he did. And especially since this is a year after he himself flipped at Talladega through the yellow line rule, which has its own share of responsibility on that part of it. But that was also something that I think needed to be more serious. In that case, I believe Edwards was just parked for that race. And I don't believe he was suspended for any other ones. I think that should have been handled much more seriously. And the problem is that, and I think the issue is a lot of these, you can only help to look at history for consistency, but I think you can also look at history for blame as to why we've led to this situation where something like that is allowed to happen, where, that is allowed to happen. And that's not even having the element in there of the car being shown to be unsafe, to have problems with it. So that's a situation there. I think any one of those three should have been handled very seriously in that case. I think with the Bubba Wallace one is in the same category. I think it's in the same category as at least those three, particularly Kyle Busch with Ron Hornaday. I mean, really all three of them. But especially, I think, with Kyle Busch and Ron Hornaday and Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski, because those resulted in very, very hard hits to drivers in a very vulnerable state at particularly fast parts of the track. Even though Kyle Busch's was under caution, I think again the fact of him being in the series that he shouldn't have been in to begin with just added to the. I think the factor that needs to be addressed in this is how unnecessary it is and how dangerous it is to the drivers. And to anybody else. And Steve O'Donnell, I believe, who was announcing this, seemed to pretty much agree with that. He seemed to kind of point out that if this happened in race 3 under the same circumstances, it would have been, the same treatment. So I think that that's what you got to look at. You have to look at how dangerous of a situation it is, and how unnecessary it is. And I think those are the ones that have to be looked at, a lot. Now I know there's other ones that you can look at, and, situations like, for example, Joey Logano and Matt Kenseth at Martinsville. In my mind, now, and again, I will admit some bias in this because a lot of that was ginned up by the media and kind of made a big thing. And I for one, in 2015, I actually applauded at the time. I didn't appreciate it because I wasn't, I get tired of seeing the same driver win over and over again. But I had to appreciate, to a degree, Logano's strategy back in 2015 of winning every race in that stage, in that elimination round. I thought that was a bold move, to go out there and just win each one of those and just completely leave everybody else in just a frustrated mess. I thought, in terms of winning a mental game, I thought it was a great strategy. Where he went wrong was that situation with Matt Kenseth. And, again, who knows if that was the situation. Luckily, it wasn't a situation where he was right rearing him and putting him in the wall or anything like that. That would have been way worse, and we would have a completely different story. In my mind, and maybe this is the wrong way of thinking about it, maybe this is a way to kind of look at it, Martinsville is a much slower track. The way Kenseth handled it was a situation where he just kind of pushed him towards the wall, and yeah, they had a wreck, and they both took each other out. Thankfully, neither driver was injured. But I don't think that should be something that's considered in a rule going forward, because you can have a driver get seriously injured at a track like Martinsville or like Phoenix or like New Hampshire, for example, of course. These tracks have that history. I mean, Richie Evans, for example, we lost at Martinsville in a modified wreck. I think in the past, I still believe I'm less critical of the Logano one there. Maybe it's just something petty about, just the storyline of it and Matt Kenseth's and everything, versus if he did it at Texas, where, say he didn't do anything in Martinsville, like he wrecked, maybe he just fell out of the race. And then at Texas, he went out there and he right-reared Logano and put him in the wall. That would have been a very different story. And again, you got to look at the danger and how unnecessary it was there. Yeah, it was unnecessary in the Martinsville situation too. I don't think it was as dangerous of a move, but I think where we are now, though, if something like that happened at Martinsville this year, with this precedent set in place with the Bubba Wallace situation, it probably should be treated the same way as the Bubba Wallace situation. I believe it should. I think it was Alan Cavana pointed out this week, today rather, saying that this is more like drawing the line in the sand. That now, here's where the line is. You don't do this. If you do this, you're going to really get the book thrown at you. And okay, yeah, all this stuff in the past, it was handled differently. Phoenix with Jeff Gordon and Clint Boyer was one thing. The Keselowski thing, all this other stuff was handled differently, all the way back to Kevin Harvick himself when he was parked at Martinsville. I seem to remember that was kind of an ordinary kind of situation with him and Coy Gibbs. But clearly that turned out to be a much bigger thing. And it's kind of one of the earlier examples that was on the kicking the tires list there. But I think that that's the important thing. And that's what NASCAR needs so much. How many times do we hear about it in any of these discussions? It's like, look, they got to be consistent. There's got to be some kind of consistency, and they can't have it be complete anarchy. You can't have just people just wrecking each other, because that's not racing. I know that, and it's tricky in stock car racing because, of course, the close contact is a big part of it. Of course, drivers routing each other out of the way and, doing stuff like that is part of it. I mean, we saw this even with the Toledo finale in ARCA. I mean, that pass at the end was a perfectly clean pass. I mean, yeah, it kind of roughed them up a little bit, but it wasn't a situation where, somebody was wrecking somebody or just completely cleaning somebody out, because anybody can do that. You do that in a video game, but you shouldn't be doing that in these cars. And again, I think NASCAR would have been well in their position to really come down hard on them, especially if they are as concerned as I think they are about these last 3 races and just wanting to get through them so they can fix this car. The last thing they needed was anybody. And again, This is, again, addressed to anybody who thinks this is about race. It's not. If this was Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick, we would be having the exact same discussion. So to make no mistake, I do not want to hear that this is some kind of thing about race. It's like, it's the one thing I agree with Bubba in his interview is that, he's a contender now. He is a guy that can win. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. That Kansas win was impressive. And he made notice that he, under those circumstances, and doubly so because of the situation where he's not even in the playoffs and going out there, and he took that win. And I think there's a lot of positive things. You can add all that other elements in there too. Obviously, as he himself has mentioned, people are gonna describe things however they're going to describe them. But again, if it was between two white drivers, if it was between anybody, we would be having the same discussion. Maybe it wouldn't, it's those two extremes. That is the difference. And I think that's important to keep clear, is this. I've seen some people, again, just like with Kurt's announcement on Saturday, some people kind of go in the wrong direction with this a little bit. It's about driver safety. It's about being very, very serious about this. And it's about a lot that's going on. And we haven't even really talked about the situation with Toyota. Toyota is going to be is furious about this situation for Christopher Bell's involvement in it, which was also itself needless. A guy that, is also himself, much like Bubba, been on the ascendancy this year. Very much, got that breakthrough win at New Hampshire this year. Very nearly beat Kevin Harvick man-to-man at Richmond. And then came up to this situation here and, won the Roval and made this next round, and being involved in this too. For Bubba to be involved in an accident that's helping, that actively hurts another Toyota member. And again, I'm not a fan of team orders at all. What I'm saying is this is a situation where you have a lot of toes that were stepped on here. Between and a lot of people that were shown disrespect, and a lot of things that were hurt, and a lot of things that could have been way worse than what they were. And I think I don't want to say an example needs to be made, but I think NASCAR is concerned about that a little bit. I think they pulled their punches a little bit here, because they were worried about that if they came down too hard on him, if that was going to be sending the wrong message. But I think personally, and this is just sound a little Pollyannish here, but to quote the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, to judge somebody not on the color of their skin, but the content of their character. We're judging somebody on what they did. If a couple of white drivers did this, it would be the same thing, and it should be treated the same way. This, if anything else, handling this seriously and really coming down on him would be just as much of a statement of how he is just as much an equal to anybody else in this field as anybody else out there. They're not going to treat, they're not going to segregate him. They're not going to treat him in any different way. They're going to treat him the same as everybody else. And that's what needs to be done, because that's what consistency is. You treat everybody the same way. And I'm encouraged that a lot of the discussion isn't at these extremes. It's unfortunate that these are here, but the more people just kind of ignore those, the more you just hear what's happening over here. And I think when it comes down to this, it's ironically very black and white. It just comes down to just safety and how everybody's concerned about this, and we just got to get through it and we got to move forward. I have no doubt that Bubba Wallace will learn from this. And that the rest of the field will as well. And thankfully it was, and much like with a lot of these other situations, thankfully it wasn't any worse than what it was. And I think that is worth saying. But I do believe it was but for the grace of God in this one. He's just, as Amp Lemon said in his video, about Dale Earnhardt, sometimes just mere inches can separate something from being, just an ordinary situation to something very tragic. And I know it's very easy to get complacent in it and just kind of just view this as just entertainment and kind of deep person things. You're just saying, oh, this is this car number versus that car number, and this is that thing versus that. But there, as I've said, and especially since like the Indy road course race last year, these are not people. These are not like crash test dummies. These are people. And there's a real human toll here when things go badly. And that's where things, and racing is never going to be 100% safe. And that's where I think, a line, I believe, has been set. And I think that that's going to be much better going forward as to, how serious of a situation is and how needless it was. So I believe that's where we're heading on this. So I think ultimately it's going to be a positive experience. It's unfortunate that it's been as negative as it's been. And again, I think that's the other issue too, is like, versus the, we can dissect other aspects of the fight itself. I agree with the consensus of many people. Excuse me, I got to drink something here. Didn't count on getting too far down the rabbit hole on this one, but I agree with the consensus. I was very impressed with how Kyle Larson handled himself in this. This was a very, very difficult situation for any driver to face. And again, with any other driver coming up to him, again, if it was Kevin Harvick or Kyle Busch or anybody else in this case, say that it was one of them that won stage one and led 29 laps. Kyle Busch, I could see him being that upset with the season he's had and just looking to get through the rest of this year, maybe trying to get one more win for M&M's. I mean, if it was him in that situation, I wouldn't blame him for being upset either. But, you don't right rear somebody. If he did that same thing, we would be having the same discussion. We really would. And that's what needs to be kind of looked at too. So that's kind of where that situation kind of comes down to. And I don't believe that's too far off where the consensus seems to be. I am encouraged that a lot of people are kind of seeing this for what it is, and they're not trying to allow too many, things out there. I mean, I know it's hard. It's hard when it's somebody that's this popular, that's bringing new fans into the sport. And it's nothing against that. It's nothing against that at all. Again, I love it, me personally, and I think a lot of other people would agree. You love seeing other new teams coming in, new fans coming in. You got to have new things come in. It's the way the sport has always been. And it very much speaks to the lifeblood of the sport itself. We need to keep bringing people in, but there's got to be a set of rules. There's got to be. And there's got to be an awareness that you are still engaged in a dangerous sport. And that is so important. That was so important. And yeah, I mean, maybe this does get people to kind of re-examine things. I mean, I'm kind of re-examining it myself in terms of, I remember tweeting after the Matt Kenseth thing. It's like, wow, this is the coolest thing Matt Kenseth ever did. He just straight took Joey Logano out. But was it something really dangerous at the same time? I mean, I'm kind of thinking about that. I mean, probably it could be argued. I know that the Gen 6 car had very different safety features to this one, but was that really dangerous? Should that have been handled more seriously? He was suspended for multiple races, Kenseth was in that case, right? He came back for Homestead at the end of the year. It's a tricky situation, but I like that something has been done. I was also wondering, and talking about this last bro, we were kind of coming with the same conclusion. We were wondering if anything was going to happen with the team itself. I think the other element that we haven't really talked about here is Michael Jordan himself. I do believe from a lot of the interviews that we've seen with Michael Jordan, and I know he keeps to himself and he's got, his own businesses and everything else. And this is just kind of his latest venture here, in investing in this team and kind of getting this going. I believe a great deal of Michael Jordan's success is not just his athletic prowess and what he has left behind in the annals of basketball history, but he is a very shrewd businessman and he suffers no fools. And that's one thing I believe. I think that interview he gave when Bubba Wallace was making his first start for 23XI at Daytona, he's like, look, we don't pay losers. And I don't think he was joking. He's very professional, demanding with any business he's going to put his name on. Think about that too. Putting his name and his brand and his influence behind that. I was wondering, I mean, it could have been very possible that maybe between Sunday and now that maybe he was going to let Bubba Wallace go. I think that was part of the equation. I think that was very much a possibility, as maybe unthinkable as that may seem, and as sad as it would be. But I think that was at least a thought at some point. And I think that's also very serious to look at too, because I do believe, given Michael Jordan's history in NASCAR, the fact that he, as a kid, was visiting Haas Ellington's shop in Charlotte. I mean, he's from North Carolina. I mean, the big intro when they played over the music in the stadium there. That's his thing. I mean, that was where he grew up, and he's like Brad Daugherty that way, a guy with a long-standing passion for the sport, and he wants to stay involved in the sport. And if one of his drivers is making him look bad, I am sure he's looking at that very closely. And again, it's not just on Bubba Wallace too. I think this very much goes back to Texas and the Ty Gibbs situation on pit road. I have no doubt that even though Ty Gibbs was not his pick and he was just a guy that's a relief driver, I am sure he was very hands-on with what happened there too. I have no doubt, so that's kind of the other element too. So who knows? I think that's another thing to kind of look at too. But I think that's kind of the situation with a lot of this. So it's unfortunate. It's an awful situation on all fronts, but something had to be done. A message had to be said, because this can't keep going on. And especially these mile and a halves, with another mile and a half next week at Homestead. Homestead usually has pretty low attrition, not known for really heavy hits. Usually people are very close to the wall. Usually you don't have a situation where somebody gets right-reared or something. But as things get more intense towards the end of the season, I think a message needed to be said. And I'm thankful that it wasn't a tragic situation that led to this. It was very close to being one. Let's make no mistake about that. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I know some people, I'm seeing some comments on like YouTube videos and stuff saying that that's too much. No. I don't want to hear that. Okay? So that sounds like this end of that spectrum. It's like, no. Don't look at this any different. Again, if it was Kyle Busch that did this, it should be handled the same way. It should be treated just as serious. And we got to get real about this, folks, because we can't, it's become, I know that, it's the one aspect of Em Lemon's video on Earnhardt that I disagreed with, is the belief that people fell out of interest in NASCAR because it's too safe. I completely disagree with that. It is very much a dangerous sport. And it's not just because of this particular car. Anything can happen. We've seen so much crazy stuff happen this year, but then we've seen crazy stuff happen in the past too. I mean, again, did Carl Edwards think Keselowski would flip in 2010? No, I don't think so. But the possibility was there. Freak things can happen. These guys are all brave to put their lives on the line. Same thing with the pit crews. Same thing with the officials. Same thing with the medical staff. They're all part of it. That's a big part of it. And there needs to be an appreciation of it. I'm not saying that everything has to be treated deadly serious. I think there's room, for levity and having fun with it and kind of enjoying it. But I think that's got to be in the back of your mind. It has to be, because it's there. It's there, and we saw this weekend how easily it can go in that situation. How easily it can happen. And that's it. And it could be accidental, or in this case, it could be something deliberate. And that's a big part of it. So again, I don't want to make the entire show about this. There's a lot more I kind of want to talk about from this weekend, but I can't ignore the elephant in the room. So that's kind of where I am on this. And, I know not everybody's going to agree with that, but I got to say it, because it's an unfortunate situation, because we're seeing a stalemate between, I know what people hoped would have happened in this case versus what really did happen. And when I wrote the article on this, because incidentally, he did finish last in this race. And of course, at that point, that felt like the less relevant aspect of the whole story, but I still had to write it. So of course I was going to do that. When I wrote it, I didn't make it a commentary article. I didn't want to go that direction. I just said, look, but I think the one thing, and I've said this in the past about some of the documentaries that they've done on Bubba Wallace, I think the one thing that I'm very dissatisfied with them is that they don't just tell the story. They don't just do it chronologically. It's like this happened. Okay. And so when I wrote my article, that's what I put in. I said, I start with Kurt Busch's announcement and, talking about Alex Bowman not being in the field and being their most recent winner, and the series just trying to get to the end after all these safety issues and safety discussions, and putting it in the broader context. And I think if other events, you know, and this isn't just with Bubba Wallace, this is just kind of an approach that I think just needs to kind of be used a lot more in general here. But, you know, just describe the facts exactly how they are, not try to sensationalize anything. It's sensational enough. You just break it all down there. I would have done the same approach if it was Kyle Larson that was last, but that's what needed to be done. Because, you know, you can't decide where you're going to go from here on something if you can't even agree on what the sequence of events are or why some elements of an event are more significant than others. So and I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about actions. I'm talking about content of character. I'm talking about what people do. And that's the situation here. And that's where we can't let things get confused in this case. And so that's what's going to go forward. This isn't just something that's just going to apply to Bubba Wallace. This is going to be everybody. Everybody's going to be in the same situation because they all got to race each other. And that's kind of where we are. So that's kind of where this is all with that. So it's an unfortunate situation. So hopefully it's all going to work out on that. Again, I don't want to just, you know, again, running, you know, too far on this. I haven't really looked at the chat here on this, but again, I hope I'm being clear on this here too, because that's the other thing that needs to be clear on this. So, yeah, so there's that situation. So, yeah, bizarre way to really start the race there in that situation. You had this situation with the you're Ryan Idiot. I'm seeing your comment there. Yeah, the way the team's not contesting the suspension is kind of telling. I would say that's probably Michael Jordan's influence there. I am pleased that, you know, that he's looking, you know, that he's looking into it. Again, there's a lot of factors at play here, and I think that was the thing that really needed to be understood here. It's very easy to have an opinion on just the wreck itself and just start there and not look at it, but I think that's the larger context is really important, and that's what's going on there. So again, you know, I don't like everything being negative on this. I know I get already enough of a reputation for just talking about negative stuff. I got some very positive stuff to really talk about here too. But I didn't want this to be kind of at the end of the show here. So, we're kind of starting off here. Definitely interested in your guys' thoughts on this too. I appreciate the chat here on this. So again, thank you for, keeping this on here too. So we'll get into all this and we'll talk much more about the rest of the action this weekend. So here's the transition. Here's how I'm going to kind of pivot here. So we'll talk about. So one thing I kind of want to talk about is kind of the media side of all this. So the wreck happens, and everything happens the way it does, and everything. So this kind of brings up one of the little things that kind of happened to me on this weekend, and so the wreck happens, and I know, and I've said this before. You know, when it's a big name story, when it's a driver that finishes last, but everybody's already covering it, like everybody's at the infield care center, and especially something like this where it's like playoff implications and stuff like that, people are going to already get the quote. And I know I'm just going to be another person that's in the way, and I'm sure way other people are going to ask the same questions that I would ask, and they're going to get the same answers that I would have got. So I don't think there's going to be any difference. The thing I like to do with interviews is I like to kind of pick up the ones that don't get interviewed or the aspects that don't get talked about. So when situations like this happen, Chase Elliott's wreck at Phoenix in 2019 is a perfect example of this. I usually follow the car because I see what the team is doing. I think that's interesting because sometimes you see it on TV. NBC actually, or USA, I guess in this case, did a pretty good job of showing that with this. And I think that was another part of that. So, you know, I think that was interesting. So in this case here, I just went over to the garage area and I was waiting for the 5 car to get towed in. So the 5 car gets towed in. It gets brought around the back part of the turns 3 and 4 side of the Neon garage. And there's again, it's kind of this diamond shaped garage, and it's got haulers. It's got 4 banks of haulers. It's got 2 here and it's got 2 on the top side here. So you got like 4 on that. And Bubba Wallace's hauler is like on the turn 4 side here, and Kyle Larson's is kind of in the middle of this one here on the side. I guess I need to get like a marker board on this show at one point here. I'll probably have some kind of other aspect too. But that, so you have a situation here. So I knew where I needed to be. And of course, there's crowds everywhere. So you got media, you got fans, you got people standing there. You also have an overlook. There's an overlook to look down into where the haulers are, and you also have glass windows to look into the garage stalls. I mean, it's the most visible place that a car could possibly be. Like, there's no place to hide anything. So far be it from me to be surprised when I come over there and I'm doing my thing, and I'm taking pictures. So I get 2 pictures off really quickly when the 5 car gets pulled in. It gets pulled in, and the tow truck kind of goes out here, and then it backs up, and the back of the car is just scraping across the ground, and the left side of the car is just destroyed. The violence of this impact, can't be overstated. And kudos to others that got pictures of this car too, because that needed to be seen. I know it was seen on the track already, and there are people getting shots of it, but in the garage too. Both left side wheels broken off from their suspension, scraped up on the side. It's a miracle. It is, and very thankful. Again, I don't want to sound all doom and gloom on this. Very thankful that Kyle Larson came out of this okay. So kudos on that. But I taking a couple pictures of the car, and suddenly this woman comes up, this PR representative, and she starts doing this, like this X signal, like waving like this, like no pictures, like saying it just like that, like, no pictures. And I'm with a friend of mine here that he gets like autographs and stuff, and he's kind of going along there and hanging out, and he's trying to get video of it, and he's like getting pushed back. And like because she's starting to tell the security guys to kind of form up a perimeter, and so these 2 perimeters get set up on this one bank of haulers here around where the 5 car is getting pushed in. And there's like, 2 or 3 security guards here and 2 or 3 security guards here. And you can't get into that. Like, they're just kind of pushing everybody back and kind of telling everybody to kind of stand back over there. And it's like, oh, well, look, you can't take any pictures of this car. And the security guards just kind of following orders and all that. But it's absurd. So like, it's like you got they're telling people even like put their phones down. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. You could see this car from like 5 different angles. You could see it from, first of all, where you're standing on the periphery. I mean, you're going to really keep everybody from taking pictures of this car. And I want to make something very clear here, and I don't know how clear I made this at the time. This was entirely a Hendrick Motorsports thing. This was not a 2311 racing thing. For all the stuff that was happening there, when I went over, I walked around the bank of haulers and went back to where the tow trucks were coming in, and Bubba Wallace's car was towed in. Nobody stopped me. I saw Bubba Wallace's PR person there, and she was just kind of following Bubba and kind of, talking to him over in the hauler there, which was, again, around the corner. But the 45 car, no issues at all. And so those pictures I took of the car there, no problems with that. Got the shots. But then the car went past that perimeter, and what was very interesting is NASCAR had them park not where the hauler was, which was around the corner, but they had them parked directly next to the 5 in the same stall. Not even where there's like that little, like between the garage doors. They got 2 garage doors. You got the little barrier there, like in the same stall, like they're very wide stalls. So they parked both the cars together, and the crew members, they're like close enough to each other, like they're like almost bumping into each other. Now I'm sure they did this because they didn't want to have a fight between the crew members, and they wanted to kind of keep an eye on them. And they kind of closed that off. They didn't want anybody hearing what they were saying or anything like that. But it was the strangest thing, because all the crew members were like, they were just, deadly quiet, like not saying anything, like just not making eye contact, just, taking this off and pulling this piece of debris off and trying to get the shop wheels on and getting all that set up. Really inefficient for the 2311 guys, because again, it was a ridiculous situation for them, because their car, again, their hauler was around the corner, so they would have to push the car back out and get it all the way back over to where their hauler was, whereas the 5 car was pretty much lined up perfectly to where its hauler was. So, bizarre situation. Then on top of this, the 20 car pulls behind the wall at the same time. The crew had kind of been working on the crash clock for a bit. I kind of heard some grinders and saws and stuff like that kind of working on it. Time expired. They had to push the car. I think Bell drove the car back there, and then he's stuck in this perimeter. So now you have 3 cars in the field, and you can't take pictures of any of them just because they're all near the 5 car here. And this was another thing that I think was a little bit irritating in this particular situation here. And I took the pictures, and I hesitated posting them because this person was just like, okay, well, now I've been advised they don't want me posting it. So I talked to a couple people here, and and a couple of people I know that are experienced, much more experienced media people than myself. And I asked them, And thank you to both of them for getting back to me so quickly as they did. And I said, look, this is kind of the situation. This is kind of what I saw. They said, like, look, they don't want me taking pictures. Like, what the heck is going on here? And my first instinct when that happened, the person came up and was like, well, screw you. I'm posting these things anyway. There are 63 people whose names are on my magnet in the car in the parking lot who paid for me to be here. And I am going to take these pictures and I am going to post them and I am going to share it. And I'm going to tell them that this is that story too. And I'm going to tell them if they want to make themselves part of the story and say that they don't want people taking pictures, well, guess what? I'm going to tell them that too. So, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I take that very seriously. You got, those of you in the Patreon here too, like, you guys deserve what you get what you need to pay for here. And same thing for those of you who follow on the Twitter and stuff too. I'm not saying you have to be in there too. So, but definitely for the people that are in the Patreon, it's like, look, I'm going to get you your content. Like, I'm here. This is the last place battle. This is directly relevant to what I'm doing. So you better believe I'm going to get the pictures. So, I talked to the couple of guys. They're like, heck yeah, you post the pictures. It's like, yeah, it's like every time, one of them told me, I don't know if they want me saying their name, so I'm not gonna bring it up, but, they said, look, when somebody, says that we can't take pictures, like, we're going to take the pictures. And, it's like, it makes us want to get the pictures more. So that comforted me at that point. And then I posted them later on. So those are available and you can see them on my Twitter feed there. And I put it in the article too. So that was something that was kind of disappointing from this. And I was frustrated from Hendrick Motorsports in general. And I think there's kind of a little bit of an attitude that's seeping into the Cup Series that I am not crazy about. I think one thing that attracted me to doing the last car thing instead of just a general, more traditional website where it's just focused on who's winning the race and who the big names are and who the stars are is there's this us versus them thing that definitely happens with the big teams. And some of the big teams are starting to kind of take on this Formula One kind of elite kind of aspect to it. And I get that it's not like it's unearned. These are the top teams. Chase Elliott is 5 wins this year. Kyle Larson's the defending champion. It's a great program. It's nothing against that. But Hendrick Motorsports, for some reason, has kind of had this latest, at least from this weekend, I was very disappointed in how difficult they were making it for media to cover what was going on, good, bad, or indifferent. Same situation after the race. And this person that I talked to, with the Noah Gragson thing was actually very kind. I mean, he was cool about it, but basically it made it sound like somebody else was telling him, like, we got to do it this way. So the other thing I wanted to do at the end of this race is I was tracking Noah Gragson because I thought this is a great story. Especially to offset kind of the Bubba Wallace thing. This is going to be kind of a bigger part of the article. And I was going to say, okay, here's Noah Gragson. He's from Las Vegas. He's tearing it up at Xfinity. He's a favorite to make the championship 4. Didn't make it this time. Lost to Josh Berry here, but who knows what's going to happen at Homestead or Martinsville. Getting down the line here, he's driving Alex Bowman's car, which he himself said is like the greatest opportunity he's had. And driving the 48 car at the track that Bowman won, that got him into the playoffs, a playoff run that was cut short by his concussion at Texas. Gragson gets in the car, and he's very nearly in the top 10. He finishes 11th. Austin Dillon just got away from him there at the end. So when the race was over, I sought him out. I was like, oh, I got to get this guy's quote. Like, Noah is already a hoot. His stock's on the rise. And this is always something that is always frustrating me, because when it always seems like I go for the times that I do go for like a big name story or like a top driver kind of thing, it always seems to bite me. Either I don't get the interview or something else happens, or maybe I'm waiting so long that I miss something else. That happened to me at Fontana, and I'm still ticked about it. But I did that, and that was, and I wanted to talk to him. I'm literally right there. He could hear me as I'm talking to the PR guy. I'm that close. And and he wasn't at the media bullpen, which is at the other end of pit road. He was way up the other end. And I'm like, look, and I asked the PR guy, I was like, look, can I talk to Noah? Like, this is a great run. I thought it was a good job that he did. And he said, no, you can't interview him, because, that's, if you could interview him, he would have been down at the media bullpen. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, you go at an Xfinity race or a truck race, you can, if you're media, you can go right out on pit road. You can just talk to these guys. I mean, I love covering races where there's an Xfinity race, because then that means I get to run into Ryan Vargas again or Tommy Joe Martins. I really wanted to talk to Parker Retzlaff and Raja Karuth this weekend. Unfortunately, I couldn't. I missed the connection on both of them. But I mean, if I was on the right end of pit road, I could have talked to them too, and that would have been great. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, but for the section of pit road I was on, I was able to catch it, and I didn't have anybody giving me any problems. But in the Cup Series, and with Hendrick Motorsports in particular, I'm getting the sense that there's just this little bit of an extra barrier there. And I don't know if this is just something that was worked out between the media when they did the bullpens or not. But it's unfortunate because, again, I like talking about stories that aren't getting covered, and nobody else was there. And I'm like, we're just going to let this just kind of come and go. I mean, I guess, I don't know if Gregson did his own video. I know he does a lot of social media, and maybe he had his own video and he wanted to do it that way. That's fine. But I felt that was kind of a missed opportunity. I know he didn't get a top 10. And maybe that's why he wasn't in the media bullpen. But I thought that would have been a nice story. And I was going to kind of have that kind of offset, kind of the situation with Bubba Wallace and show, because I like to kind of I like to make things positive if I could do it. Like, I mean, I want to do that. And I like Noah. I mean, I think he's another guy is going to be another driver that's everybody's going to have to deal with. And I'd love to see the 42 car get back to victory lane when he drives it next year in place of Ty Dillon. By the way, congratulations to Ty Dillon for landing the 77 ride here. It's a bummer for my buddy Josh Balicki, because I know he's a really cool guy. He's been in fewer races in that car this year. I have no doubt he'll land someplace too, because I think he's a good guy. But good for Ty Dillon too for landing a ride there on that. And we'll see what happens with basically, I mean, Balicki and Castle have shared that car this year too. But that was a missed opportunity, and it was needlessly so. So between the PR person for Hendrick Motorsports with the Kyle Larson thing and the Noah Gragson situation, I was a little bit upset at Hendrick Motorsports on this. I don't know if it's something that I just didn't understand, or if it's something that they can change a bit there, but it was a little disappointing. But in both cases, it was something that I didn't invest too much time in and kind of moved on to the next thing. And in both those cases, it turned out well, whether it was talking to another driver, on pit road for the Cup race, or if it was, the Bubba Wallace's car after the wreck there in that one. So we got the coverage for you. So, but like I say, you guys, those of you that follow the site and those of you that, whether you're a Patreon member or not, I only do maybe 4 or 5 races this year, each time. And, I'm just determined to just get you as much stuff as you guys can get. And, I hope you guys enjoy it there for sure, because I enjoy providing it. And it frustrates me when there's other barriers there that are just kind of put in the way, because then I want to kind of see if I can get through it, and get the stuff for you. But I know at a certain point, you got to kind of work around it and then just kind of cut your losses and get to something else. So there was kind of a learning experience in that sense. But I don't want to make it sound like it was all negative, because far from it. I think this race in general was very competitive. I'm glad the tire issues from Texas did not seem to really carry over into this. There was a bizarre situation with Austin Cindric, who was so strong in the early laps racing Tyler Reddick, and then lost multiple laps on pit road. Kind of reminded me of what happened to Daniel Hemrick during the Fontana race earlier this year, where he lost like 5 laps and then gained all of them back as a lucky dog or wave arounds. That was kind of crazy. But that was kind of a whole different situation. But yeah, that was kind of a different way to look at there too. But congratulations to Joey Logano on the win. I really thought Chastain had this in his back pocket. There were a lot of drivers. There were a lot of comers and goers in this one. And Bubba Wallace among them too. Again, I don't want to sell him short on the run that he had. I was watching him. I'm like, man, I'm going to lose so many points to Lastbro on this after having the great run that he was having at the beginning. There were a lot of people that were really competitive. Vegas is really, it didn't used to be one of the most competitive Cup races, but this was one where we really saw the car come alive in the spring with Bowman's win. And we saw very much the same kind of thing here. Great race at the end between Ross Chastain and Joey Logano, where Logano had to really track him down. We saw guys like Daniel Suarez have great runs. Other guys kind of figure into the picture there too. A lot of positives to really glean from it too. But I think in general it was just kind of a really kind of interesting situation on that. But it was I thought it was a really competitive race. At least it seemed like it from where I was. I kind of went in and out of the media center. At one point, I actually kind of watched some of it from the Neon Garage. I really liked a lot of, I think the Vegas track, and I got this from Last Pro as well. I think the Vegas track is probably one of the most accessible tracks among the the newer tracks, like tracks like Fontana and Texas and things like that. The tunnel from the Neon Garage to the grandstands is very easily accessible. The infield grass isn't too wide. It's pretty easy to kind of get out there to the starting line if that's what you want to check out. I again, as I kind of said at the beginning of the show, I think this is kind of one of the venues that I'd love to do a lot more. Also, kudos to the staff over at the Holiday Inn Express on by the Nellis Airport. That was so close to the track, and they were pretty affordable, so that was really cool. They were very helpful on that, so we kind of checked them out this week, and so that was pretty cool. Yeah, I think it was pretty hip. So yeah, gosh, I know I've hopped around quite a bit here. So okay, so we talked about that. We talked about the race. Yeah, the end of the race, really. Then we talked about the banner. We talked about that. So I guess we can get more into the Xfinity race. I mean, good job by Josh Berry pulling off that. That's what I'm doing wrong. I need to pull up the results here. I need to kind of check that out at the same time. I'm trying to do this from memory, and I think that's not the way to do it here, but we can kind of cut into that. Oh, wow, they already got the Homestead entry list up. Appreciate you guys tuning in here on kind of a rare Tuesday evening show here, but obviously we were kind of traveling back late last night. We got here about just before 10 o'clock Pacific time, and then I had a clinic to prepare for at work this morning, so it's been kind of a gauntlet here, but we got back here for that. Yeah, Christopher Bell, the bottom five. Ty Dillon with suspension issues. Going back to the Cup results here in the bottom five. Landon Castle, big thanks to him for getting back to me there. I wanted to kind of catch up to him after he had the spin. David Green, the NASCAR official, was taking pictures of the rear bumper of the 77 car after his spin at the end. And I wasn't sure if that was one where, again, after Alex Bowman's wreck, I think every wreck NASCAR is really taking a very, very close eye at. And that was very much the case in this situation, too. But Landon was very quick to get back to me, said that he was doing fine, but appreciated the concern. I know a few people were asking me about that after the race, so I appreciate him getting back to me on that. So very much so on that. Ryan Blaney, heartbreaker for him, started fourth, led a great deal of laps as well. I'm still believing, and Lastbro, I think, is really trying to convince me on this, that Blaney is going to make the Final Four without winning a race and possibly winning the championship. Maybe we get a 20th different winner at Phoenix, and he wins the championship by finishing second or third or something. I'm starting to believe it. I think he might have something going on here. Blaney looked like he had an outside shot at pulling this off. All three of the Penske guys at one point or another, obviously Logano with the win here, seemed to be a factor in this one, which was a bit surprising, given that last year it came down to what? It was Denny Hamlin versus Chase Elliott in a very different set of circumstances. So, definitely one to look at there at the same time. Let's see here. Chase Elliott back in 21st. Very surprised to see Chase Elliott not really be a factor for most of this race, really. Back in the 21st spot there at the finish, especially after his runner-up finish last year. The Hooters curse continues. Still Hooters-sponsored Cup cars, not one since 1992 at Pocono with the late, great Alan Kowicki. I don't know if Chase is sponsored by Hooters in any more races this year. I don't think he is. I thought this was the last one he had this season. But correct me if I'm wrong in the chat for sure. Brad Keselowski was my fantasy pick on this. I thought he'd do a lot better since he was, he had the most wins at Vegas among active drivers coming into this race, at least. Plus, I was kind of thinking, I wasn't exactly sure who to pick to win this one. But we had a King's Hawaiian truck that parked next to us when we were at the hotel, and I kind of took that to be a sign. So I just kind of went with that. I did not get the bread samples at the hauler, though. I know there was a lot of that. I saw a lot of pictures of that. I missed out on that, but kudos. I'm glad the fans got to check that out. And they had that for everybody. So that was a cool idea. Great job by Justin Haley, working out some strategy to lead some laps, finishing in the 14th spot there. Talked about Gregson there in the 11th spot. Haley's teammate AJ Allmendinger now in the 16 car for these next few races, as Gregson's still in the 48. We don't know what's going to happen at Phoenix, at least last I heard. I don't know if it was a typo in the tweet or not, but I believe they said the next 3 races that Bowman was going to be out of the car. I know that Ally has a very large sponsorship presence at Phoenix, and I don't know if that's a factor in whether or not Bowman's going to run the finale or just, wait till next season. We'll see what happens on that end, but I think that's the other part of it. Eric Jones with a fine run. He was kind of in and out of the top 10 during that event. I almost said today, but nope, not quite. Finishing in the 8th spot. Kyle Busch, what an up and down day that he had. I mean, he had the spin coming off turn 4, had the wheel come off at one point, finishing in the 3rd spot. Kind of crazy. I mean, this is talk about an enforceability of a penalty. I think that's going to be kind of the interesting thing here is that Kyle Busch gets the 4-race penalty for the loose wheel, but of course, there's only 3 races left. And from the report that was posted today, that penalty extends into the clash at Daytona. So, but of course, Kyle Busch, as we all know, is going to the number 8 car next year at Childress. So does that mean that his crew chief for his new ride is suspended? Probably not. I probably at the face of it, it follows the team, not the driver. I'm guessing that's a situation, which I guess sucks for Ty Gibbs or whoever's going to take over the 18, that they're going to have to run the clash without some of their tire changers, which really isn't relevant to the clash because there's not really a pit road really in the event. But not having the crew chief, that's going to have a factor in it. So I guess that'll be something interesting. We may or may not cover the clash next year. I'm still 50-50 on it. If it comes down to between that and Fontana, I think we're going to do Fontana because they're talking about tearing that track up. I'm still not sure if that's actually happening or not. But if that's a situation, then definitely want to kind of be there for that. Again, great staff over there too. I've got no problems with those guys. I'm not crazy about what they're possibly going to be doing to that place, but we'll see. I don't know what's going on that end. One thing I personally think, that the possible reconfiguration of Fontana, I think they're setting that up. If they really are going to make it a short track, don't be surprised if they're going to try to make that the championship race. I really do believe that that's kind of where we're headed, since the championship race is already in the Southwest at Phoenix, since it's another ISC track, I believe Fontana is. It's definitely not an SMI track. I think that would probably be a possibility. I mean, think about having the championship in LA. I mean, especially if you're going to have the clash still at the Coliseum, and you can have the year begin and end in LA, kind of like when you used to have Riverside bookend the schedule, if it was like in January and November, and then you had summer races and all that was different. But that would be kind of another thing to look at too. But, the results. Let me get those back up there. Great job by Chase Briscoe. I think everybody, myself included, was not really expecting much out of him once he got to the top 8, especially with the whole situation with Cole Custer. That was a kind of an absurd situation. I don't blame Tony Stewart for being upset that he's had to deal now with 2 different ridiculous penalties between whatever it was at Talladega on Kevin Harvick's car that was illegal, that at the same time made him just abysmally slow during the race and finished back in 29th or something. And then the Cole Custer thing where Briscoe was already in. See, again, this is where I talk about with muddying the waters and making sure to get the facts clear. That the fact that Briscoe was already in and then Custer checked up or whatever the situation was and then gave him a 2-point cushion there at that point. I don't think there was any way he could have known about that, but I know NASCAR looked at other evidence. I stand by the fact that I do not like team orders. I don't like a situation where I think team orders is also the mere implication of it seems to be something that NASCAR themselves are against too. Now I think they can still be more consistent about that. But it's an unfortunate situation. I don't envy it for Stewart, and it's disappointing to hear that, that's frustrating for him too. So I don't know what's going on over there, but I know that a team dealing with both those things in such close proximity has got to be frustrating. And from the reports I'm hearing, that's definitely been the case. So, yeah. And as to the whole Kevin Harvick thing and all that, I don't know what to believe on that. I think, Harvick's, too good of a get to try to let go or anything. And I don't know what's going on with him and Haas. I don't want to speculate on that. I just hope we'll hear some more information on that pretty soon here and what's going on with the 4 and the 41 and all that. I haven't heard anything new, so I can't really speak to any of that. Let's see here. Looking at the Cup results, I guess we can go in the Xfinity race here. We'll get into that. We'll do our trivia segment tonight, folks. After a little bit of this too, we'll talk a bit more about the trip this weekend and anything else that happened on there. Okay, yeah, Fontana is ISC. Thank you, RD Fox. So yeah, same kind of situation there too. Yeah, them tearing down the grandstands. That sounds like that's what's got to be the situation. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. This format is kind of set. And I think we talked about that before on last week's show. It's like, yeah, you do have a format in the points that kind of encourages team orders and manipulating it, especially when it comes down to 1 point or two could completely decide whether or not you're even going to have a chance at the championship for, much less even be in the playoffs. I mean, everything is so central. I mean, talk about, being completely counterproductive to the idea of getting points racing out of racing. I mean, this is more points racing than we've ever seen. We're talking about filling up buckets of points at this point, which I still hate. I think it's a stupid metaphor. Maybe it's an accurate one, but it just kind of points to how silly the whole process is. It only makes me think of Double Dare whenever they describe that. It's like, make sure you get all the green liquid in there and find the flag or whatever. It's like, it's stupid. Are we doing racing or are we climbing the aggro crag? I don't know. I'm getting my Nick shows mixed up here. Let's see here. What do I got? I got some other tabs here for you guys. Xfinity race here. Congrats again to Josh Berry on the win. Noah Gragson in the second spot. Ty Gibbs in fourth, just behind Justin Allgaier. So great runs for JR Motorsports. Sam Mayer back in the seventh spot. Playoff guys generally up there, except for AJ Allmendinger. Loose wheels on both the right side wheels. Forced an unscheduled stop. Long green flag runs did not help him and finished back in the 22nd spot. Far and away the worst of the playoff drivers. Ryan Sieg, your last place finisher in that, due to a steering issue during the race. Steering was a little bit of an issue for a lot of these cars again. David Starr's car actually missed qualifying during, I believe it was Saturday night, actually due to a steering issue. Or I guess it wouldn't be Saturday, it would have been Friday night because the race was on Saturday. But in this particular case, Starr was able to climb back up and finish in the 31st spot. But Sieg in the 39 car, a couple of unscheduled stops, dropped him some laps down, finished well back in the order. But the 39 car ended up out of the race there. They were really trying to get back out there. Sheldon Creed had a very sick sounding engine. I don't know how well it came across on the broadcast, but around the time that Sieg went behind the wall, the number 2 car had a really flat sound to it. Went back in there. The ECR guys were taking the headers off the car and the heads off of it and kind of looking in the engine and saw there was an issue with the valve, a drop valve there in that situation. And that was enough to leave them in the 37th spot. JJ Yaley with engine problems of his own ended up the only other DNF in this race, finishing in the 36th spot. Matt Mills and Josh Williams rounding out your bottom 5 in that particular case. Thank you to Ryan Sieg for speaking with me. I kind of followed them back into the garage area when he pulled back in there. The team was really busy at work, and Sieg himself, very hands-on with his program. He and his teammates CJ McLaughlin and Kyle Sieg were kind of hanging out on pit road for a lot of qualifying there as well, but unfortunately not able to get the car back out there. Disappointing, on top of the fact that they were so close to making the playoffs. I think that was one thing that made writing the article a little bit easier, is kind of remarking on how good of a season he's had and really trying to still look for that first win. It's one that Lastbro and I have enjoyed kind of following and kind of getting him back into the Xfinity series as well. But unfortunately not meant to be at Vegas here this time around for the 39 car that started in the lucky 13th spot there. Big thanks to CJ McLaughlin for talking to me. He's a hoot. That's the first time I've ever talked with him. We had a great conversation there. He told me a bit about the SciAps company. I believe it's an automotive company that he works with. It's been backing him since 2018. Congratulated him on his top 10 run that he had at Texas earlier this year. And it was funny because I was taking pictures of, I was trying to get a shot of him, Kyle Sieg, and Ryan Sieg as they were kind of working on the cars on pit road. And as I was doing that, CJ noticed me and he came up to me and we were talking there for a bit. So kudos to him. I think that's another one of these drivers in the Xfinity series that are really entertaining to talk to. I still think that, I feel like I get more content out of that series even than Cup these days, which is strange, especially with the fewer small teams that we see out of the sport these days. Yeah, really great group of guys over there. Kyle Sieg's team, the 28 car, their other teammate, had an issue with the, I believe it was the clutch line, according to a crew member there. That kept them from getting a qualifying lap in. And it was kind of interesting to see behind the scenes because they would do the really quick practice session, but before the cars lined up for qualifying, anybody that had issues, they kind of scuttled their cars right behind the wall really quick and started working on them. I don't know if they could get back out there to do a qualifying lap or they just give up their spot altogether. I know they used to have like a 5-minute clock or something to get people back out there. It's really tricky for the Xfinity series because the Xfinity garages are way, way over in like turns 3 and 4. It's not at all part of the Neon garage. It's a whole separate building at the very left side of it. So it's kind of a long ways you got to get there to even get the car to the garage. And with this tight turnaround time where you have so little practice and then a very, very short qualifying session kind of bolted onto it, it doesn't leave very much of an opening. And maybe, the car would struggle at the back of the field anyway if they try to rush it back out there. But I think it really speaks to when you have some of these races, where you have multiple cars out there and maybe you got multiple guys that are going to be sent home because you got more than 38 guys out there. It's kind of one of those situations, but a challenging track to have problems on. I think that's definitely one thing you can glean from it, especially on the Xfinity side. I mentioned a little bit earlier talking with Johnny Jackson there over at Motorsports Business Management. Big thanks to him for speaking with me. He was telling me about Matt Jaskell driving the 13 car and how he was involved in the production. He was one of the drivers in the Mad Max movies, as well as, of course, the guy that skydove into the track last year before driver introductions. Kind of reminds me of Stanton Barrett from the discussions I've had with him in the past. Don't have any new news on the Stanton Barrett project here. I was hoping to run into him at the track because he was over at the Charlotte Roval, but I did not see him at the track this weekend. But kudos to Motorsports Business Management and Johnny Jackson out there. We'll probably catch up again at Phoenix. I understand he told me he was going to be out there. But he was fun to talk to. I can see how he and Carl would get along really well because Johnny, they have very, very similar kind of personalities. Might make something out of a video. You never know. That might be something we do a little bit further down the line for you guys. So kind of keep an eye out for that. Also, thank you to both Stefan Parsons and Nick Sanchez for speaking with me on pit road after the Xfinity race. Like I said, I would have loved to get more interviews there. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video interviews. I know I kind of teased this on last week's show before we went to Vegas, but I am trying to do a bit more of the video interviews because it seems like most channels are doing that. I had avoided that in the past because I think it seems like a lot of people kind of hold it up right in front of them. And I like to kind of make eye contact with who I'm talking to. Like I want it to be an actual conversation. But I found if I have kind of a widescreen thing on my phone, so if I kind of hold it to the side like this, I felt like I could actually have a conversation and just kind of, leave the phone out of the equation. So I did that with both Stefan Parsons and Nick Sanchez and had the discussions with them. I understand Nick Sanchez, it was confirmed today that he's going to run the remaining races this season in the 48 car for Big Machine Racing. He actually mentioned it in my interview as well, but I guess it was already something that the team was waiting to announce a little bit later along the line. But if you haven't seen those clips, those are already on my Twitter feed, of course, at Last Car on Brock. Yeah. Hailie Deegan was, of course, the big story from the Xfinity Series race. Great job by her finishing in the 13th spot for the SS Green Light effort with some support from the Stewart-Haas Racing deal. Really did a great job. This is another driver, very much like some of the other drivers in the field, where I was trying to get an interview with her, but she had plenty of media presence there. There's a video, I'm sure she's got a video that's going to be coming up if it's not already up, with her weekend in the Xfinity Series. And I was standing by. She was signing a lot of autographs for fans after she qualified her car into the Xfinity Series field on Friday night. And I was following her, just kind of waiting my turn to interview her. But she was talking with this other guy. This guy had like his camera, and she was kind of feeding her questions and kind of doing this. And he was just really focused. And I'm like, this guy's not going to stop. He's going to kind of pretty much follow her all the way to the garage. So I kind of just took a hint at that point and a step back. There was an NBC guy that followed her as well. And I don't know if he got a quote either, but it seemed like he was going to have to wait a little while too. So, but not for lack of effort there, folks. But that's, like I say, every time I try to go for the big story, it never seems to work out. But I'm perfectly happy with the small stories. And if you guys enjoy those, look forward to more of those very soon. In fact, we're going to get ready to do Phoenix here in a few days, and we'll see how crazy that gets as the top 3 series, as well as the ARCA West series, go towards their championship rounds. So that'll be very, very exciting as well. Let's see. Anybody else here? Landon Castle just outside the top 10. A little bit of controversy there when he stayed out on old tires. Didn't quite work out for him there, finishing in the 11th position. Certainly had at least a little bit of a role in how the race played out there. Mentioned Raja Karuth and Parker Retzlaff finished nose to tail in the 20th and 21st positions back in the order there. Let's see. That's right. Garrett Smithley was in the race there in the 78 car, finishing back in 25th. Ryan Vargas, I thought it was really cool how the folks that were sponsoring him there were very supportive of him. I posted that picture as he got out of the car. He was his feet were bothering him there afterwards, so he took his shoes off, was kind of relaxing there. And I didn't realize, I guess the gentleman that was talking to him was one of his sponsors there as well. So I shared that picture, and apparently they responded to that as well. I didn't mean to make it seem like Vargas was more hurt or anything like that. Certainly not the case. But definitely given those long green flag runs that race was having, it was certain, and it was very hot on Saturday. Very, very hot. I got to say, Friday as well. Friday was worse, and then it kind of cooled off through that. By Sunday, it was actually pretty nice. So that was kind of the trade-off there too. October, they say in Vegas, is pretty nice, and I think generally I could agree with that from this. Although we tried going to Fremont Street one day there, we went to the Heart Attack Grill, and it was a little bit too hot for that. So that was the difference there. Thankfully, we got enough to drink there at that point, so it kind of worked out there too. Let's see. Yeah, the Xfinity Series field here. Anything else on that end? I think that's about it on that. Let me kind of roll this back down here and check out the chat on that too. So yeah. Oh, who's Last Pro again? Yeah, that's my younger brother. He prefers to. The reason I keep using that name there is he prefers to kind of stay anonymous there. I do mention our championship picks. We make our race winning picks for the Cup Series. But otherwise he'd be on the show here. I've offered it to him. But he's not currently interested here. So that's kind of where we're looking at that point there too. So let's see here. I wanted to talk a bit more. Oh, let me get into this. I got an exciting little treat here, and I want to see if this works. I haven't tried playing audio on this show before, but we're going to try something new here tonight, folks, and we're going to do that. It's a kind of a special deal here too. So I want to kind of talk about the other thing I want to talk about is Mark Martin in this race here, and how exciting that was. Mark Martin, for those of you who don't know, did win the inaugural Cup race at Las Vegas in 1998. The last place finisher of that race, incidentally, was Hut Strickland, who I believe only finished maybe about 50 laps down. It was very unusual, very low attrition even from the beginning of the track's career. Of course, it had very different banking back then, much lower ranking in that situation. But but that was kind of the different situation there too. So, Mark Martin, being your inaugural winner, came back out to the track there. Apparently gave a very entertaining interview with the crowd and did a Q&A at the track. And then on Sunday, indicated, after kind of posting some pictures of his car, indicated that he was going to be driving the car to pace the field before the race started. And apparently there's a really interesting story behind the development of the car. I'll refer you to Stapleton 42's channel here on YouTube on that, because I know he just posted a video on that with some great footage of his own. It was very cool to see both himself and his girlfriend there. They were very, very cool, very, very friendly. We talked a little bit about JD McDuffie there. May do something on that end where maybe that's something in the works there. We'll find out. It was cool. I think the both of them do some great work there on their channel, and love their shirts too. I haven't pulled the trigger on one of those. I picked up entirely too many shirts this year, so I don't think that's going to be in the equation. They do some good work over there too. So that's it was good to see them at the track there. for that. So we talked for a little bit. But of course, the man of the hour at that point there was Mark Martin at the front of the grid. They were kind of looking over, talking over, kind of the engine and everything. His wife Arlene was there, as well as his son Matt Martin, and all three of them were there. And it was very cool. So I got over there, and I wanted to make sure that was one of the big things I wanted to kind of accomplish on Sunday, because I wanted to thank him personally. Because he retweeted, he's done a couple retweets of some of my posts in the past. One of them was when I posted the excerpt of the J.D. McDuffie book before posting it, and the other one was more recently the Buddy Arrington video. And he posted some very nice words about that. And I've been meaning to thank him personally for those there. This was a perfect opportunity. Thankfully, I was able to talk to him, and I do have the audio here. I did not videotape it. I thought about doing it with the phone, but I felt that was, Mark Martin's old school. I think we're used to the microphone thing. So I don't have video of it, but I do have audio of it. And I thought about playing it into a video, but I was going to, we have an echo? Oh, that's not good. That's not good. What echo do we have here? Do we have, oh shoot, where are we here? Oh gosh, I think that's the problem. Okay, hang on. How does that sound? Is the sound better there? I think what happened is I muted the wrong input. Are we okay there? I'm sorry, how long has that been going? That hasn't been going the whole show, has it? Oh my goodness. Okay, we have an echo. Okay, anything better? Let me know in the chat here, folks. Don't worry. We're running long anyway, so hopefully not too many people had to suffer through that. All good now? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the heads up. Don't hesitate to let me know. I think I have two streams here for the microphone, and I think that was the issue. Okay. Gosh. Okay, I am so sorry about that, folks. I gotta get Lastbro to be the producer or something like that. Maybe that'll be something he can do, and I think that'll work. Just a couple minutes? Okay. All right. Well, we'll go back into the Mark Martin thing here, but long story short, yeah, you got Stapleton 42 was there, which is really two people, of course. It's himself. I keep forgetting what his real name is, but it's himself and his girlfriend there. Very friendly. Did a great video on Mark Martin's car there. There's a full story with the gentleman that rebuilt the car after it was recently rediscovered. So definitely check that out if you haven't seen it yet. So again, as I was saying before the audio went completely to hell, so I did talk to Mark Martin there, and I wanted to thank him in person because he retweeted some of my posts about the J.D. McDuffie book as well as the Buddy Arrington video. And so I do have the audio here. I do not have the, it sounded a bit weird for the echo. Okay, all good now. Okay, good. I do have the audio here, so I'm going to try to play it on the show tonight, and hopefully this will be kind of a step towards getting some more segments on the show where we can have some more visual and audio stuff for you to hear. So bear with me, folks. We're going to see if this works, and I'll try playing it. I'll let you know when it starts, and you can see if you can hear it. I'll go ahead and play the clip. It's about 2 or 3 minutes. So we'll try that. And if you can't, if it's just dead silent, definitely let me know in the chat here, and we'll figure that out together. All right, here we go, folks. This is with Mark Martin. This is before the start of the South Point 400 on pit road.
Mark, we haven't had a chance to make. My name is Brock Beard. I did that video on Buddy Arrington. I just wanted to thank you in person for promoting that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome piece that you did, and you do a lot of other fantastic work. So I appreciate immensely, the work that you do to bring historical part of NASCAR, to the masses.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you so much. Particularly with Buddy Arrington, what's your favorite memory of him?
Well, I raced with Buddy the full schedule in 1982, and he beat me plenty. And he was an awesome.
Echo on the audio? Oh, that's not good.
Mark, we haven't had a chance to meet. My name's Brock Beard. I did that video on Buddy Arrington. I just wanted to thank you in person for promoting that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It was an awesome piece that you did, and you do a lot of other fantastic work. So I appreciate immensely, the work that you do to bring historical part of NASCAR, to the masses.
Oh, no, that means a lot. Thank you so much. It's particularly with Buddy Arrington, what's your favorite memory of him?
Well, I raced with Buddy the full schedule in 1982, and he beat me plenty. And he was an awesome guy, and he was everything that your video showed and told. He was a fine man. He was a good racer. He knew how hard he could race, and he knew how to do it, and he raced and made a living doing it. And it was it was a cool experience. And he had a great year in 1982. Probably a better year than I had.
Well, at another, I understand you have, you always keep a keen eye on a lot of the underdogs in the sport. Another one I did a profile was J.D. McDuffie. What comes to your, mind from, obviously, you ran in his last race, but I always understand he kind of kept to himself. Was that very much kind of the same experience that you kind of saw?
Well, I don't know. He did, he was a racer, and he talked, and we talked. We ran in the same circles, and 82, he ran back in the pack where I did. So I didn't think he kept to himself. I thought he was just a racer who worked on his stuff and raced and was a good dude. That's how I remember him.
Well, thank you so much for your time, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. Is it back? Alrighty. So hopefully, I don't know if you guys could hear me here. Let me know if we have any issues there. But yeah, hopefully you heard the clip there. But big thanks to Mark Martin there on that. I'm piece by piece. I'm figuring out which of these buttons does what, and I think we're getting there. So yeah, hang on. Oh, wait, do we still have audio? I think we do. It says here we got the microphone. We don't want to have the echo. Sound back? Okay, good. All right. Are we good, RD Fox? Okay. Hopefully it's still there. So yeah, big thanks to Mark Martin on that when he posted that. I did pause for a second there, so it did cut out for a sec, but I kept it going there at that point. Okay. Hopefully we'll catch up on the audio. We're going to figure this out eventually, folks, and we're going to get plenty more content for you guys. All back to normal? Okay, excellent. So, yeah, big thanks to Mark Martin. Very kind words for the man himself there. I wasn't sure what to do with the clip there. I'll probably put it up on the YouTube there eventually, but very appreciative that he checks out the stuff on the channel and that he liked the Buddy Arrington video. And it was great to be able to talk to him there. Didn't realize, actually didn't think about it before our discussion that, really Arrington's best season, that 82 season kind of discussed in the video, really coincided with Mark Martin kind of starting out in the Cup Series back then and him getting beat by Buddy back then and them running in the same circles. And I was very interested in what he mentioned with J.D. McDuffie there at the end, that he didn't come off as bashful as a lot of other people. Pretty much everybody I've talked to about J.D. McDuffie has always been telling me it's like he barely talked to anybody. He just kind of worked on his car and then he went home. But maybe with other racers, it was a very different situation. And, I guess with Ernie Irvan, we had a little bit of that in the discussion I had with him. But with Mark, I think it's just like, yeah, they worked on their cars. They were probably around the same part of the garage area, and they had those conversations back then. So I thought that was really cool. So big thanks to Mark Martin and everybody involved that brought Mark in that number 6 car back out there. We got a little bit of a clip there of the number 6 running out there to lead the field, and that was very exciting to see there at the same time. So so definitely have that there too. So anyway, as we kind of wrap up the show here for this evening, I know it's been kind of a long one for you guys, but I appreciate you guys tuning in on this special Tuesday edition here of Behind the Wall. We'll do some trivia questions here to wrap up the evening, And then we'll kind of do that until our next show this Sunday, following the Cup Series, Xfinity, and Truck Series action over at the Homestead Miami Speedway coming up this weekend. So if you guys have any other questions about the action this weekend or anything else I can cover for you on that, or if the audio just completely drops out again, don't hesitate to mention it in the chat, and we'll cover that at the same time here for you guys. So in the meantime, we'll do our trivia section here. And here again are the categories for our Tiger Electronics deal. They are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are the questions on that. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Now, yes, actually, as I'm just thinking about it, the Mark Martin thing. He did tweet earlier today the disappointment that he didn't meet up with Jack Roush at the track. And as I said, I can confirm that Jack was at the track. I saw him walking towards the turn 1 and 2 side of pit road as I was going to turns 3 and 4. We didn't exchange 2 words there, but he was definitely there. I mean, the man stands out. I know there's a lot of speculation as to if it was a sponsor situation. Obviously, Chris Buescher's car was sponsored by Castrol in this race, and the Valvoline car, there's conflict there. I can see that. But Mark Martin is very special to Jack Roush. I think that's one thing that I think is very underestimated. Mark was the reason that Roush Racing's Cup program even started and got off the ground. And it completely reinvigorated Mark's career after his unsuccessful bid back in '82 when he was racing Buddy Arrington. After that really struggled, and then came back in there and drove for Jack, and of course had the Hall of Fame career that resulted in that. I have a hard time believing that anything would have kept Jack Roush from coming down there. And I know there was a PR person that kind of fell on his sword and said that, that it just kind of dropped the ball in getting that to happen. I don't know how much of that is true. I don't know. If it was just a mistake, I get that, I guess. But I mean, that's unfortunate. I mean, especially given the history of that car, the gentleman that was working on it and getting it fixed up and back to the way it looked in '98. It looked gorgeous. It was, I don't know if the pictures did it justice, but it really came out really nice. Wasn't always one of my favorite paint schemes back then, but definitely another aspect of it. Another kind of funny thing with the Mark Martin thing too, before I interviewed him, there were a couple other guys there that were getting pictures with him, a couple of fans that came up. And they're like, Mark, I remember you, 1997, Fontana, like you were so good. The Valvoline Thunderbird, you remember that? And Mark was like, yeah, I ran out of gas, and it still pisses me off. So that was great. He knew right away. It was like talking to an old baseball player and remembering like one play. But that was pretty cool. So yeah, Mark's a hoot. Great people. But a lot of people know that already. So I guess there's that. Categories, you got pits and NASCAR and tracks so far for the options. Let's see. Echo started with the audio file. Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know if we went through a time vortex or what. Let's see. So again, the categories here on this, again, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories here for tonight. Hey there, Jonathan. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you're enjoying the show tonight. I saw you poking into the chat there earlier. Definitely no shortage of stuff to talk about from our weekend there at the track. Jonathan was working the media there as well with the racingexperts.com over there, who are very helpful to the LastCar site there and providing pictures and other stories for the races that we were unable to attend there. Big congratulations, speaking of which, to Dominic Aragon, who is getting married this week. So congratulations to him. Great follower there of the site, longtime viewer of the website and everything. So congratulations to them as well. Big news on that front there. Let's see. Again, any other picks here for you, the categories you like here? NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories here. Alrighty. Yeah, we're going to figure out this audio thing eventually here on the situation. I do apologize for the audio issues on this show. It seems like that's another regular feature. We're going to have an individual graphic for that, but it'll probably have audio issues itself, so who knows. But we'll get set up eventually. Alrighty. All right, I see a couple categories for tracks. I know we're got kind of a skeleton crew here. It's late on a Tuesday night here. We're not going to go too much further here, folks. I know it's already been kind of a long show, but no shortage of stuff to talk about, as you could well imagine, from the weekend. But really, again, it was a tremendous weekend. Really enjoyed covering the action there. I hope you guys enjoyed following along. Even on our trip on the way out there, we were completely. That's another aspect of it. We were completely off the grid driving through Nevada. We had this one route. We were going over the mountains. We live out in kind of Sacramento area. We were going over the mountains into Nevada, out Lake Tahoe direction. And then went out towards Carson City. But then we went south from there to kind of work our way back down to Vegas. And we were trying to find some place to eat because it was about like 12 or 1 o'clock. And we took a detour on this unpaved road to get to, what was that one town? Hawthorne. Which is where they had the Ordnance Museum. They had like old military equipment out there. And we took a detour out there, and Last Bro said it was just a couple miles. Then it turned out to be like 38 miles. 38 miles of unpaved road. But luckily it was broad daylight, so we didn't have a situation where we were like trapped or anything like that, or having a hard time seeing. So that worked out really well. But we found some interesting spots. We found like an old abandoned farmstead out there. I believe it was the 9 Mile Ranch. We passed a couple of old mines, a water and power development out there. Fascinating trip. I'm glad we took it, actually. It ended up kind of turning into kind of a weird situation. And we are going to do the drawing for the magnet probably later this week. Probably not tonight, but maybe either tomorrow night or Thursday. We'll get that set up there. And it's still got plenty of dust all over it from that. We got all kinds of dust on the thing from that. So it's going to be a very experienced magnet. That whoever is going to win the drawing. And I got a couple of other goodies to throw into it too that I picked up over at the track this weekend. Some stuff to throw in there for you guys. So just another thing I love to do there for members of the Patreon. And we already have the magnet printed and ready to go for Phoenix in a couple of weeks. I'll reveal that, I believe, on our Martinsville show to lead into that week for championship week. And then, of course, it's not too late to get your name on there if you're interested. Getting your name on the magnet and getting entered in a drawing to win it. Anytime you sign up between now and the conclusion of the Phoenix race in about 3 weeks here, you can get your name written on there and entered into a drawing to win that. So look forward to more information on that. And again, that is patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock for more details on that. Let's see here. So NASCAR tracks. Okay, I think we only got a couple options here. We'll do tracks. I see we got a couple votes for that, and we'll just do that to wrap up for this evening. Alrighty. Let's see, not that. Let's see. Some of these are too easy. Let's see. No, not that one. Let's see. Alrighty, here we go. First question, folks. What year in the 1950s was the first Crown America 500 run at Riverside? What year in the 50s was the first Crown America 500 run at Riverside? First question for the evening. Graham Cracker, I'm sorry if I scared your cat there with the echo earlier. I saw your comment on that. I'm kind of just browsing some of the other comments from earlier here. Oh, goodness, yeah. Yes, Mario Andretti in the new Formula One car. That was very exciting, too. So, yeah. Let's see. Sausage curbs. Yeah, some of that could be dangerous. Interesting comments here on this too. I appreciate you guys participating in the discussion there earlier. I didn't want it to be entirely a lecture, and I didn't want to. I knew it was going to be a big part of the show to talk about the Bubba Wallace thing, but I mean, it would be silly not to. It's of course been a big discussion there, but I think it's very relevant to the ongoing discussion with the safety of it too. Victor Lane, thank you so much for your support there on the channel there. I see your comment on that. I appreciate you following the channel. I did meet a few viewers of the channel at the track, especially at the bull ring race. I met about 3 or 4 different fans there too. So big thanks to everybody that reached out. There were a couple more people I wanted to meet up with. Garrett Rowe, I know he's a big supporter of the site. I missed a connection with him. If you're watching, Garrett, I'm sorry I missed you, man. If you're at Phoenix, let me know. I'll be out there as well. Hopefully we can meet up there too. But we had a great time on that. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, and that's another thing with the whole thing. I mean, I know we're going kind of back to the Bubba Wallace thing, but I'm not the first one to say this, but a lot, they're going to be playing the clips of the wreck and the fight, for weeks because of course that's, NASCAR's, you go like to the 79 Daytona 500, how big that was and the thing. It's going to be, I'm willing to bet at the broadcast at Homestead, it's going to be the first clip you're going to see. The first clip. Before you see anything else, like the race winner at Vegas or the Cup Series trophy. The first shot is going to be that fight. You know it. And that's always the double-edged sword from this in the sport. You can have something like that maybe is really reprehensible, and yet it's got to be there. It's going to be in the montage. It'll be played to that well song that they play in the opening. I mean, I could see that. I could see that happening. They did it with the Kenseth Logano accident. They did it with all these other ones. They're not above doing it. And I get it. I put together montages too. I know it's challenging to find good clips. And when you have a good clip, you're thinking about like, ooh, where am I going to put this in the song? Like, I get that. But it does send mixed messages, which is a problem. What year in the 50s, the question again, was the first Crown America 500 run at Riverside? Crown America 500. Dana White says hello. There you go. 56, 55, 53. Hope I'm having a green flag kind of day. Thank you, Victor. I do appreciate it. I've had a few cautions come out with the audio, but that's typical. I think we usually get 2 to 3 on a show here, so we'll get there eventually. Piece by piece. I mean, again, this board here, here's I'll show you again. For those of you not familiar with my setup, I got one of these bad boys here, and it's got all these buttons. I only know that maybe 2 or 3 of them do. I can get the applause button, I think. Let's see. Oh, no. I think this is the music button. I think this will either be the applause button or the sad trombone. Let's find out. Nope, that was not it. Okay. Well, see, there you go. That's perfect. That captures it perfectly. So we got that too. Alrighty. What year in the 50s was the first Crown America 500 run at Riverside? And the answer is 1958. 58 is the correct answer. RD Fox 76. Looks like you got it, man. All right. Air horn. Yeah, no. Didn't have that one. Let's see. Ooh, here's a good one. Don't look this up. I mean, I always try to do that on the show. Don't look it up. Here's a question. Who won the inaugural NASCAR Winston Cup race in Ontario in 1971? The Big O. Who won the inaugural NASCAR Winston Cup race at Ontario in 1971? It was an air horn? I heard laughter. I don't know. I hope it's not that screwed up that I hear one thing here and you guys hear something else. That'd be a big problem. Who won the inaugural NASCAR Winston Cup race at Ontario in 1971? Alrighty. Yeah, that's so weird. It's got like multiple channels. I got to delete some of these channels here because that'll probably keep it from doing that echo effect. I'm glad I did the audio test. I appreciate those of you who helped me out in the audio test before the show started. So I didn't want to start off with this wonderful sight gag behind me and then the audio being all screwed up. I was going to be really angry if that happened. So that was it. Oh, that was before you pressed the applause. Oh, okay. Air horn. I don't know. All right, here we go. Who won the inaugural NASCAR Winston Cup race at Ontario? The answer is A.J. Foyt. Maserati 9, you got it. Buckshot Jones, you got it earlier. There you go. Very good, very good. All right, here we go. We'll probably just do one more question here. We're already up to 2.5 hours. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We still got 43 people in here on a weekday. Right on. All right, here we go. Let's see, not that one. Here we go. All right, here we go. Last question for the evening, folks. How steep was the original banking at Bristol? The original banking at Bristol. Do not look it up. Try to guess it. That's the fun part. How steep was the original banking at Bristol? Yeah. Oh, very interesting. No, just kind of looking at your chat there too. No, very much appreciate the discussion here. How steep was the original banking at Bristol? In degrees. I see. We got 24. We got a couple for 20. Any other guesses here? How steep was the original banking at Bristol? Enough to rattle his cage, 18 degrees. Yeah, there you go. All right, let's find out. Here we go. One more time, folks. How steep was the original banking at Bristol? The answer is 22 degrees. 22 degrees. You guys are very close. You're right on top of it. A couple for 20 and 24. The answer is 22 degrees. It's 22 degrees. So that will do it, folks. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for this special edition of Behind the Wall, our post-race show for Las Vegas, and the discussion of, no shortage of stories this weekend here. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Again, just in case, if anybody from Front Row Motorsports is seeing this, I am sending this back to you, so don't worry about that. I've talked to your guy, and I'm gonna send it on back. Luckily, there's a UPS store. It's pretty close to my job, so that's going out. Just want to make sure to show it to the viewers here and have a little fun with it, and I hope you guys are cool with that. But we're sending that back over to you guys, and then we'll see this thing back at Phoenix, where we're going to be in a couple of weeks. So that'll be back out there. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. At Last Car on Brock is my Twitter. Patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock if you're interested in some bonus content. If you're new to the channel, feel free to check out any of the other content here. And if you enjoy the chats here on Behind the Wall, our next show is going to be about 15 to 20 minutes after the conclusion of this Sunday's Cup Series race at Homestead. We will talk about all three of the top series, the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and Cup Series, as they further populate their championship four. In the Truck Series case, we're going to know all of their four competitors after this race. It'll be the first time the trucks have run at Homestead since 2020. So that'll itself be a story. We'll be tracking the action for last place here at Last Car headquarters, and we'll wrap up with the show after that. So tune in for some more action here, and we'll have a great time on this and go from there. So have a wonderful evening, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you guys next time.